Yeah, so Brett Auten,
Yeah,
thank you,
there you
and
go.
welcome to Easy
Yeah.
Talk, brother.
Well, yeah, man, I got can't help think. I can't help launch this thing. Who put you in front of the camera?
You.
First, right?
You.
Exactly.
That's actually, can we talk about that for a
Sure,
second? I
yeah.
remember because you were like, hey, do you mind doing post-fight interviews for us?
Yeah.
And at the first, I was like, I don't know if that's like a conflict of interest. I might be interviewing. You know what's funny? I interviewed Cortavius.
Right. Oh, yeah,
And
yeah.
then literally like 2 months later, we ended up fighting. It was a conflict of interest is not the right word to describe it, but I'm glad I did those interviews for Knuckle Junkies. I think we did a pretty good job.
Absolutely, and I didn't bat an eye. I knew it would. I knew it'd fit or it'd work. And that you'd be able to kind of decipher or not. Not let the personal things kind of.
No. I always looked at it as a privilege because you guys were trusting me with it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean, who I can't go in there with any sort of internal ego, even though I'm a very ego-driven guy, because it's not my ship.
Right.
I'm just allowed on the boat.
Yeah.
I'm not the one who has the authority to sink it. That's at least the way I thought about it. So I like to think
that
I
was
always
fun. Those are
carry
for great
myself.
nights, And it eased me because I didn't have to worry about it, so I could just kind of press row, and just focus on the article, or even sit there with the laptop and get shit done, as opposed to all right, now I gotta hustle back and do all those post fights.
So out of curiosity, because I do you have like a journalism degree? Is that how this started?
English degree. I got a bachelor's of English with a specialty in creative writing from SIU Carbondale around the mid '90s.
So if you don't mind me asking, why MMA? Why Knuckle Junkies? Like, how did this even happen? Was this like you were interested in the sport and it just so happened to kind of be birthed, or did someone come to you with an idea?
It kind of started. I moved to the St. Louis area in like the early aughts and was working at the Suburban Journal newspapers. And for those of you who may not know, newspapers used to be this thing that people would read, and like you'd buy ads, and even some people would give money, subscriptions for it and stuff.
It's
really cool. It was
you're
like
aging yourself
back
now.
in the horse and buggy days, and all that. So
you would deliver it with the Pony Express.
right. So yeah, I worked at the Suburban Journals here in St. Louis, which is like a big suburban. It focused on all the suburban areas of St. Louis. There's a West County, which I worked, South County, West St. Charles, North County, yada yada. And my interest in MMA kind of started around 2010. I really, after covering a lot of, for lack of a better word, high-level prep sports in St. Louis, like multiple state championship, this and that, and all that, and basketball and football, I really kind of started focusing on the wrestling because the wrestlers are just so interesting. And like by this time, kids were already giving you like kind of sports center answers, you know what I mean? But if you put it,
Are we talking about high school wrestlers?
yeah, it's all
Okay.
high school. Yeah, that's all the Suburban Journals
2010,
focused
huh?
on. Huh?
2010?
Oh, I mean, I started here in St. Louis in like the early aughts,
Oh, okay. Because I graduated and I was a multiple time state qualifier and state medalist in wrestling.
around.
And I remember there was a moment in time where I was being interviewed for the Suburban Journal and everything.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
funny. I graduated 2011 from high school, so it's like it's interesting how
Right.
these worlds kind of collide.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it was around 2010, around that kind of time anyway, 2008, 09, anyway, I was just kind of bored with the footballs and basketball. And I really kind of, like, at one point in time, I was kind of like the prep wrestler writer for whatever that's worth. And just because, like I said, the wrestlers are so, they would give you such good copy, to use an insider term. That they'd be fresh and they'd be real and all that. And so it's through prep wrestling that I've stumbled into MMA.
Did you feel like other athletes didn't give you this?
Oh, absolutely. Like
Really?
you would be at the Show Me Bowl or whatever, and the MICDS quarterback or Webster Groves quarterback. You put the tape recorder in front of their mouth.
They turn into a politician.
They already know. Yeah, they've seen the sports centers and all that. I just want to thank my teammates and what a great job and all that. But you put a tape recorder in a kid who just got off the mat to qualify for state, and he beat a kid who's beat him before.
He's going to give you those emotions.
He's given me lots of stuff, you know what I mean? And also, I wrestled my junior year in high school, so I knew the sacrifice and how hard it was. And they had hard scrabble kids, you know what I mean? And also a big factor of that, they loved it. They loved the coverage, man.
Well,
The kids from Webster Grove, CBC, all that, so basketball, they could expect it, you know what I mean? But the wrestler kids, they love it.
It's just not a sexy sport. They just don't get the same
Yeah,
limelight.
yeah.
So I'm sure whenever you put a camera or a microphone on their face,
Write
they're
an
like,
article
dude,
on it.
thank
Yes,
you. I
exactly,
appreciate it.
exactly. So it's through the prep wrestling. One time I was flipping through like a Men's Health magazine, and I was like, "Who the fuck is this guy?" And it was like a profile on Matt Hughes. And I texted my buddy. I'm like, who I knew was like into UFC. I'm like, "Who's this fucking Matt Hughes guy? This guy's fucking jacked, And blah blah. I said it just through wrestling, and then stumbled in one after another, and yeah, that's it. And then like around 2010, I did an article on Justin Lawrence.
For the Suburban Journal?
Yeah.
Okay, so you hadn't started Knuckle Junkies yet.
No.
You were still
It was 2 years before Knuckle Junkies.
Okay, so this is like
started.
the precursor. You were doing MMA journalism before you even started your own. What would you call Knuckle Junkies? Is it its own, like, it's not
website, just a basic website, just a
But
website with a,
with years and years and years and terabytes of data.
yeah.
You sent me the link today, and I forgot myself. I'm like, dude, I
Scroll down that news and it's like,
yeah. Do you ever look at that and just think?
Today was because I wanted to prep a little bit, and this is the first time I looked at it in a while. I was like, holy shit.
Terribly sorry to interrupt the content that you're enjoying right now, but if you've been watching our content for the past couple of months, you realize that Easy Talk is a brand new podcast. We're genuinely trying to figure this thing out as we're going. Some growing pains for sure. If you are genuinely enjoying this content, we feel very humble in that, but we would like to ask that you would also subscribe and like to the channel, simply because it does help us in the algorithms and ultimately to grow. So take a second. I'd really appreciate it. And on with the show. Did you look at it with like reverence? Did you look back at it?
I mean, I'm proud of it.
You should be.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't just me. I mean, I did a lot of writing, but one thing like going through it was like seeing like someone like Sarah Levin, the photographer, did some great little photo essays like on Sampo when he was just young and coming up, and things like that. And so she did some on some others. And man, Chris Ott was one of the early guys in Knuckle Junkies, but he would do those little graphic art. And you look at, I haven't looked at those in a long time.
The thumbnails that you're using for the articles.
Yeah. And you go back and look at them now, and the intricacies of the graphics and all that. It's pretty cool. I mean, and Chris was a Suburban Journal graphic artist. We all took our, Fraser was IT, Suburban Journal. So we all took our little Suburban Journal positions.
Let's take a step back. So you did your first article, MMA article, on Justin Lawrence while you still worked at the Suburban Journal. And was this before you ever started, like, you stepped foot into a gym to train? Because I know that you also did a little bit of training as well.
Yeah, 100%.
But did you write the article and then go to a gym, or did you go to a gym and then run the article?
I wrote many articles probably before I started
Training in martial arts?
Yeah, for sure. No, I mean, that first article was like, because again, I was doing a little research. So it was like December 2010. I'd known Justin through high school out of Pacific, Missouri. That was about the furthest we went out. And he was a pretty standout wrestler, decent football player. And I done stories on him about his his kickboxing career, because he was like in high schooler beating men, in kickboxing.
He was a...
And so they'd sent like a little press packet, but anyway, it had him training with Anderson Silva in that gym in California back in the day. I can't think of the name of it, where they're all at. Well, Fraser, he was telling me all hyped about it, and I called up Justin. I'd known Justin a lot, and that was an article which it got picked up and ran in the Post-Dispatch because Strikeforce was having an event that December of 2010, and they were using that as a preview for the event.
How does that work? If you write a story for one news outlet and another outlet, quote unquote, picks it up, what does that mean?
We were all still kind of under the same umbrella, but the Post never slummed down to grab a Suburban Journal story. I mean, that was like rarefied air, and that's when I kind of had a little tingling.
There's something here.
There's something here, So I went to that first Strikeforce event. It was Henderson and Babalu. Robbie Lawler fought on that, and a guy named Rice House was on the undercard. Wrote a story about him for the St. Charles Journal. Because I went there for the event because I talked to Jesse Finney for the first time to do the Lawrence thing and to talk about the. So
Was Justin training at Finney's at the time?
not really, but Jesse was involved with the Strike Force coming here.
Oh, because his relationship with no, Strike Force was Scott Coker. That's right. It was Bellator. He moved into Bellator a while after, but I believe Bellator was what was that Russian's name? Anyway, forgive me. But Scott Coker was the one that had the relationship with Jesse Finney, correct? Okay.
Yep. And so anyway,
We're talking about Justin Lawrence, Strike Force.
yeah, and so boom, Rice House was on that card. I was like, who's this? Here's this scrawny kid fighting. Again, I didn't know anything about the sport really that time too. And so I was like, who's this scrawny kid fighting this jack dude? He went out, so I wrote a story on him went to the St. Charles Journal. And then through that, all that, kind of got to know Mike Rogers a little bit. And he let me know about...
From the story? How'd you meet Mike?
I met Mike that night at Strike Force. I
'Cause he
literally went through the press, got my press credentials, opened up to go through there.
And here's this gorilla of a man.
And I'm like, I've never been anywhere in any of these fight scenes anywhere, And there's Mike Rogers. I said, hey, I need to know Jesse. Where's Jesse Finney? And he literally put my arm around, showed me, and took me there.
What's that like though? If you've never been to an event and then you walk into the backstage and you're seeing these guys like kind of get ready. I mean, they're
it was great. It was like starting at the top. You know what I mean? It was my first event was, like I said, Dan Henderson and Robbie Law. I mean, Matt Hughes was in the locker room with
helping
Robbie.
them, yeah,
you know what I mean, and all that
prepping
kind of
them.
stuff. And I'm just kind of hanging out. Yeah. So no, it's so through getting that, Mike told me about Lance Benoist, who Lance became the first,
St. Louis.
Sorry,
guy.
Mr. Jimerson, but Lance became the first Missourian to actually fight in the UFC. And I wrote that story in the Suburban Journals in that summer of 2011, and that won me my first Missouri Press Association award. I was like, okay, we really got something cooking here. And then I followed that up with, then I just hit the highlights. T. Wood.
Are you still?
And then
forgive me for interrupting, but
I'm a full-time employee at the
Yeah.
Journal.
So that's what I was gonna say. So like you're doing these MMA stories
on the side where I'm still doing track and field.
Yeah. Okay, that's what I was gonna say. So
lacrosse
are you doing this in tandem with or in place of? So like you're
all
just
of.
adding this to the repertoire.
Mm-hmm.
And what is your like boss saying? Like, yeah, sure, whatever, we don't care.
Exactly, loving it.
Okay.
Especially because a lot of times I'd hit it in the summertime. Like I know that Lance story. I think because I was looking at it and it was like published late in May or what I mean. We just time doing things were kind of slow or whatever, and boom,
It's
what I
outside
mean?
of the school year,
or something.
Not a whole lot's happening.
But again, okay, the Justin Lawrence one got traction because it got put in the Post-Dispatch, and like I said, that was everybody's like, was that? Boom, the Lance Benoist 6 months later wins a state press award, So it was just like, okay, now the editors are like, you got any more?
When you say these awards, are you winning them? Is the paper
Me.
winning them? Yeah, so
both.
that's.
I mean, what the title of the article,
Does
by
this-
Brett Auten, West County Suburban.
Does this
Journals.
ad okay? I guess the question I'm trying to ask is like, because I don't know a whole
Credentials?
lot about.
Yeah, sure. I mean,
'cause
any
don't know a
award
whole lot
is,
about
but
journalism,
sure.
right?
It's a nice little,
Yeah, like I won this thing on this thing that I did.
Sure. Especially because it's state, it's submitted into categories, right? So it won this little niche category, but it's submitted against
a broad
Kansas
category.
City and blah blah blah.
What's going through your mind when you're winning this award on this story on this sport that you're just kind of like getting birthed into?
It's great. It's like getting this momentum going, which later led to Knuckle Junkies. Yeah.
So walk me through that. You're working at the Suburban. You started with high school sports, gravitated towards wrestling just because of the sport, your history with it, and
But still doing all the sports at the same time. But it's like
you started finding a preference for one.
Right. But they're still going to make you go to
Everything
district
else.
championship games and basketball.
Does that make it harder when you have like this thing that you like?
I mean, it did turn into like a job.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And especially Friday night football turned into a fucking nightmare.
Why?
Everybody started passing so much, and these games are like 3 hours and 15 minutes. It's like, good Lord, guys, let's play the fucking game.
When you say passing so much, forgive me because
Okay.
I'm not I love wrestling and I love combat sports.
Okay.
But if you start talking like hockey,
Okay,
football,
passing
basketball,
like NFL, passing, throwing the
oh,
ball.
okay, not like passing up something.
No,
okay,
passing.
throwing
like
the
throwing
ball. Forgive
Yeah,
me.
sorry,
forgive
it's
me.
all good.
Why is that a bad thing? If you don't,
Because
mind
it
me
stops the
asking?
clock, right? Okay.
Oh, opposed to the running
they hike
game.
the ball, and I throw to Tony, and Tony drops it. Play stops.
And the
But
clock
we hike
stops.
the ball. I hand off to Arion. You run 4 yards. They tackle. Run,
Oh, so
run.
you're
We go back to the huddle. Run.
And are you like salary at the time? So like whether you work 40-hour
Well, it's
weeks,
just attention span. What high school? I mean, what high school game needs to be 3 hours and 15 minutes? I'm serious on a Friday night, fellas. I mean,
guys, we got things to do.
Well, it's just.
Dude, I feel the same
Yeah.
thing. I'm like on a
I mean,
fight that goes to the decision, and it's just
Yeah.
kind of a snoozer. I'm like, all right, guys, you both lose.
No, but yeah, I was still doing all these other sports, but then just like I obviously I was up at state wrestling many years both nights, and that's when we got a blog I mean I've been there from
When the
from
internet
that
was
moment
still young.
yeah, oh yeah, and stuff like that. We got blog updates and stuff like that.
What was that like going from this like analog paper to? I don't want to skip too far ahead, but you were there where like that transition started to happen.
Absolutely.
Can you? What was that like at work? Like when the internet was starting to pick up, not just for emails or like this like niche thing to like, oh, look at this, I can connect through a network and a VPN, whatever, but like to like actual use case, like I can now take my paper story and upload it digitally. Is this like a game changer? Were you guys seeing the value, or was this like no one's gonna like this?
Well, what I saw, and it did, didn't realize their importance was classified ads. Okay, and so always at the back of the paper you could rent these little small type classified ads, right? If you wanted to sell a boat, you had space to rent. You had this, you had that. I remember there used to be things called happiness ads. Hey, Aaron, I just want to wear hair. Well, we want to wish Aaron a happy birthday. Boom.
That is not where I thought you were going with that. I was like, damn, dog, on a newspaper?
No, just happiness ad. I just want to wish, And those things, when Craigslist and eBay started happening, a newspaper used to have like sheets,
of classified
ads. People's car dealerships would put, their ads in there for car, and all of a sudden it just, that slimmed
so those
down.
revenue streams started.
Yeah.
But
we were always kind of a little cocky on the editorial side. You're still going to need to, read it, but it came back and bit our ass too.
But could you not have done that online as well? I guess what I'm trying to say is when I look at like any sort of news article now, whenever you scroll social media, you'll see on like without even trying, there'll be some sort of political, some sort of news article story. You click on the news article story, it'll tell you like you should subscribe if you don't want ads. And then you start scrolling, and I mean you get literally bombarded. I would make the argument that trying to read a news article that you're not subscribed for is worse ad-wise than like shifty porn websites back in 2005.
Right.
Like it is insane.
Right.
You can't scroll without getting hit with something. And it's on the sides, it's on the story.
Because that's the only way they can make money.
So I'm curious as like, were the classified ads back in the day that
Apparently, yeah. I mean, that was kind of for those of us who were like on the editorial and just kind of in our lane.
You're not in the finance.
We had no idea, and didn't realize the hit that took, but it was apparent, And then it was just kind of slow knockoff from there, Then the big advertisers stopped, and
then from there
the color ad, used to be a big. Hey, we sold a full page color ad. That used to be just like, shing,
Do you worry about the trajectory of journalism?
Oh man, I've let that ship has sailed. As soon as it went 24-hour news, whenever that went, 1998 or whatever, I don't know when that happened, but as soon as that happened, that's when you knew. You
thought it was
rotten in Denmark,
Do you think there's still a place for journalists?
Oh, I mean, there's still plenty of journalists out there doing great jobs. Plenty of them.
But isn't that kind of like
you just gotta go find them?
So that's my thing. And it's like, okay, let me take a step back. I often say that if you want to find the best and brightest, you have to incentivize them, and that's why like whenever you go to Wall Street, you might not get these guys that are like they're not engineers, they're not, technical in any sort of sense, but they're sharp go-getter individuals. They just chose that life because it was the most, it had the most fruitful endeavor in terms of money, right? So my thing is like, you want people to be good at whatever their craft is. If they're a teacher, a firefighter, whatever. I would say that journalism is actually incredibly important. No more has that been so transparent than today. Like honest journalists that are truly looking for the stories that we are not being told on social media or whatever. Like, going and seeing if there's corruption within the government, or going and seeing if there's, some sort of like legality with a trade deal or what have you,
Right.
A lot of times
Local stuff.
Yeah,
Local
back in the day,
zoning issues, but huge deal.
back in the day, if there was some sort of controversy that was brought to light, it was usually a journalist that was doing like in-depth analysis, going in and doing the work.
And you want to know how that happened? Is you had a guy set to a beat.
What does that mean? Set
A
to
beat. So it's like, all right, Aaron, you're covering education in St. Louis. You know what I mean? That's your
Everything.
You don't care about, you know what I mean? Or whatever, politics, education, or or you have a guy covering the city councils, and,
That's his job.
along with some other things, but you're at every city council meeting, and there's boring. And I used to do that stuff too. I wasn't always in sports, I was in news before I came to St. Louis. School board meetings, all that stuff. You show up and show up and show up,
Whew. Well, this.
But you don't show up. Well, that's how things get passed, and it's like, there's nobody there saying the board approved by 5-1 issue to this zoning. It just happens, right? And I mean, yeah, there may be citizens there saying, "Oh, what the hell?" But
if it's
then
not
it just goes.
If it's not put on the megaphone saying,
if it's not in your on front page of,
I have a couple friends who are journalists, and it's the same way I feel about teachers. I feel like the job is so important on so many levels because I can see how I take advantage of it. If there's a good journalist who writes a very in-depth analysis on whatever it is,
that you're like interested in,
yeah, I'll read it, I'll consume it. I'm like, oh my god, did you see this? And by this, you start using the journalist's output is then the input for my ability to navigate the world. Because they've done the due diligence, they've done the data acquisition. So it's like, it's not me saying like, I feel like this is right. It's like, no, this motherfucker went in there, did the work, found out the truth, and now he told it to all of us. Now it's our choice to use it or not, right? But the problem with that is if it's undermined by poor revenue, if you told journalists today that they can make double the money by just being unbiased and just give you the raw data, raw story, what happened with no perspective shift?
Right.
How many more people would go for journalism? And then because of that, you'd have more competition. So the stories would get more concrete, more comprehensive, more competitive. And then you have a better output. It's the same way I think about education. It's like if you want your kids to be taught better, if you want your kids to be, more prepared to compete in a global arena, well then fucking pay the instructors. Like, you know what I mean? Why are administrators making 6 figures, but the average teacher makes like 55K? Which I know 55K sounds like a lot. Try living off that.
Right. Yeah.
That's
raise
nothing.
a family.
That's peanuts.
Yeah.
So forgive me.
Yeah.
Back to the original question,
which was
essentially the where do you think the value of journalism is steering, and does it scare you?
No, man. Like I said, I've and I don't want to sound cynical, even though I am a '90s guy, and we were all about cynicism. If you're a '90s guy, but I mean the toothpaste is out of the tube. It's the Fonzie's jumped the shark. I mean,
You're not putting it back.
Well, I mean, again, I'm not going to, but there are smatterings, and yes, there are, places that do good jobs, great jobs, but they're all, let's be real, the media has, and rightfully so, has lost distrust with the people,
When you say media, do you mean
just in
actually,
general?
you know what? No, I agree because the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, CNN, MSNBC, even Fox News, and all these other.
Yeah.
I personally,
I subscribe to the Times. I enjoy the Times, but I know they've
biased,
right?
And that's the way I.
But there's also some really great, interesting story. I go there for the story. I don't go there for the.
But is that
I'm not a hard news guy, so.
Do you think the internet has kind of eaten itself? Because it used to be that, you know, things would be a little bit more concrete, or maybe because the internet has shown us the bias. But I don't remember when it was, Brett, but I used to read things and trust them. Now I read things and the very first thought I have is, what is the source? What is the bias? Then I have to go to the opposite and see if they're doing a story on it. What is the source? What is the bias? Because then it's like, it's a Venn diagram, right? It's
yeah.
like, if 60% of this story is shared, that's the truth.
And then what time do you lose interest? And you're just like, fuck it.
And that's why I always say, like, I don't blame the average person
Right.
for being ignorant to this shit, because the amount of due diligence, the
Right.
amount of effort you have to do to truly be quote unquote learned is, it's unsustainable. It's unrealistic to ask someone, hey, after your 8-hour shift and then you're commuting back home and you cook for your kids and it's 8 p.m. Watch 3 hours of shit so you understand what happens
Right,
today.
yeah.
You know, it's like, no, I get it. You want to play video games,
Or read for
watch
an
the
hour,
sports, or whatever you want to do. I get it. Like, I don't blame people for being ignorant. I just blame people for being ignorant and having a position on something in ignorance. Does that make sense? If you don't know and you're like, hey, Ariana, I don't know about this thing, I'm fine with that. That's the best answer. I say that when I don't know shit. If someone asks me something and how do you feel about this issue? I'm like, dude, I haven't heard about this until today. What do you mean? I'll say I'm ignorant to it. Some people nowadays seem to have this stance, and I'm not talking about politics. I'm talking about the GOAT of basketball.
Yeah, right.
Who's gonna win the Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson fight? You'll have guys that have no idea what they're talking about, but they'll still talk. And it's like, I think we've lost this nuance of like, hey, I don't know what I'm talking about. Let me learn.
Right.
Long-winded. I brought you on because I wanted to talk about journalism and I wanted to talk about the health and the start of Knuckle Junkies and all this other stuff, because it's a world that fascinates me. It's a world that I consume, but I've never necessarily like understood what's under the hood.
Let's pick up where we left off.
Fair. Sorry.
Fair enough. All right. So we're back at the journal. Been writing about Lance and like all the hot names. Chandler, T. Wood, who's making his name in
Tyron Woodley.
Strikeforce, right? Tyron Woodley.
Back when he was the chosen one? No, he was T. Wood Woodley. Yeah, T. Wood.
Yeah. And that's it. Again, that's when Frazier kind of came up with the idea. Or we were always just talking about it at work.
Matt did? Matt
I mean, kind of. Frazier was like obviously Frazier was the IT guy. You know what I mean?
So he was telling you like we can make a website doing this?
We were just kind of talking about it, and we were all kind of getting into MMA for the first time. You know what I mean? Well, he was already well into it, and he was helping steer me and Chris.
How did you meet Frazier? Through the
Suburban
gym?
Journals. No,
Suburban Journal.
Like I said, we're all working in the same office.
And he was the IT guy for Suburban Journal.
Yeah.
Oh, forgive me. I didn't know that.
We were all in the same
building.
Seeing
Hey,
each other
up?
for lunch, whatever.
And then the seeds kind of started being planted.
Yeah, from there.
When did you finally decide to kind of pull the trigger on it? How much time did you take from like Matt saying something to like, all right, let's do it?
It's kind of funny because, like I said, I was looking today, and I'd written those articles. 2011, they started coming out, and then we launched in the first day or second day of 2012. And so we gave it a little bit of time, you know what I mean? And I remember we went into it well stocked. Like we had like a first few
stories in the book
and all that in the book, and we kind of knew what was going on. And Frazier had already been to a Fight Hard at the St. Charles Arena. And so Tyron had his ATT Evolution gym opening with Randy Couture.
Remember, I saw the video on that. You guys went and did a comprehensive, like, this is the gym.
And so we launched it off with a story on Ashley Cummins, St. Louis firefighter, female pro fighter.
Back when women fighting was
right,
the fringe.
Right.
She's
absolutely.
Actually, you know what's sad about Ashley? She's legitimately a pioneer.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't know if she'll ever get the credit.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
That sucks.
The story's still up. We wrote about her quite a bit. So we had Randy, we had Ashley, and then we had, and it was literally...
When you say Randy, you mean Randy Couture?
Couture, yeah, because he'd been at, and we did something on that. No. I'm sorry. What we did is because Sarah Levin did that book about him.
Oh, yeah.
So that's how
the picture book.
And so we included, that's how we sandwiched Randy in with the launch. How
did you guys meet and understand Sarah Levin? So for those that don't know, Sarah Levin was a photographer for not just
amazing
martial arts,
photographer,
but for wrestling.
I feel
so
sorry for her, man. She came up around the time when cameras just started being so accessible. you know, and here was a true artist, you know, and whereas, you know, it just, you know, like I said, soon everybody had a camera in there, you know what I mean? It was like taking photos, and you could, you know, buy your own kind of automatic cameras and just let it rip. And
talk about an industry that kind of got obliterated with technology and times, photography.
You just sit there and just machine gun it, and you'll get something eventually.
That's
you
good.
know. But like I said, you go back and you look at some of the stuff that Sarah did, especially like I said, the Sampo thing, which was awesome. One in the Randy book is great. But yeah, so Sarah's book, Smashley, story on her, and then Jesse talking about, hey, we're leaving the Sheraton on 44. We're going to branch into the casinos.
Lumiere.
Yeah, I mean, getting out from the Sheraton.
That's back when it was big.
You know.
Damn, man. You know, there's going to be a lot of...
So he hadn't even been in the casino, with one casino, when we launched it.
There's going to be a lot of guys, and I'm starting to feel this now, too, because I'm 2 years removed from the game, and in 2 years, you see amateurs coming up, and I'm thinking to myself, in 2 or 3 more years, I will have, like, eclipsed, you know, like, no one will know who I am, so to speak, except for the oldies that were there. And I feel like that's... The sad part is, I feel like that's what's happening in Knuckle Junkies.
Oh, well, that's fine.
There's
the sad part is happening to people like Lance Benoist, and Andrew
Matt
Sanchez,
Ricehouse, and a lot of the guys that you talked about.
Chris Heatherly.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
No one talks about Stump.
People would say back in the, we never got much grief. You know, people and then they loved it.
No, because
but one thing they used to give us a little grief about the St. Charles comment. And I used to, or content, a lot of St. Charles.
Oh,
but I used to always say, it's like, dude, if I wanted numbers, I'd film Chris Heatherly hitting a punching bag.
Really?
During those times, he was just
hot money.
Yeah,
super
popular. You put it on, it just.
What was it about him specifically?
I always kind of had a soft spot for him. One thing, it was when Facebook was just kind of starting. I mean, this is sounding weird. But it's kind of when Facebook was starting off, and he was great.
We should have never left MySpace. Tom wanted to be was my friend. He wasn't trying to sell my data.
It was when Facebook was starting out, and he was great on there. And the dude could fight, and he showed up, man. And that's one thing, there's a lot of things that go into fighting, as you know. But when the lights turn on and it's Saturday night, and people are in the house, that kid, more times than not, showed up and
the very first time I heard of him was Jim Jenkins when he did the show where he put Luigi Fioravanti versus him. And
that was it. I remember that show. Yeah.
Luigi got food poisoning the day before, apparently, after weigh-ins.
Yeah.
So Chris Heatherly's in the crowd, I can't fight tonight.
Yeah,
everyone was like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Everyone was kind of talking shit on Chris. Everyone was talking about how Luigi was going to walk him down.
Sure.
And beat him up. And then Luigi was the one who didn't show up for the fight. Now, listen, I'm not saying he didn't have food poisoning or anything. I guess what I'm trying to say is, say what you want.
It was a high-risk fight for Luigi. High risk, no reward.
Yeah, because Chris was the up-and-coming guy that not a lot of people knew in the local.
And people knew.
He was known locally, but not nationally the way Luigi was. Because Luigi was coming out of the UFC.
314.
Yeah.
Nobody, you know what I mean? Just there. You know what I mean? Not even like a... You know what I'm saying?
I mean, he did something right, though, because he did get the call to the UFC.
Sure, but this was way before that.
Fair. Very fair.
You know what I'm saying?
Chris is one of those guys that
Whereas Luigi had a name already,
But it is a shame, because I remember when I was coming up, these were the names that everyone was talking about. When I was still an amateur, Matt Ricehouse was the Strike Force guy that was becoming, and he was fighting Ryan Couture.
Yeah,
Randy
that was
Couture's
a great
son.
story.
And he was also coaching. I remember when I first started trading at St. Charles MMA, he was coaching and cornering Sampo. Chris Heatherly at the time was training at Steve Berger's MMA, and he was Berger's MMA golden boy. You know what I mean? And but Berger's also had Dan O'Connor, the Newman brothers.
Yeah, had a nice little thing going on.
They had. In a lot of ways, the MMA, both amateur and pro prospects. I'm going to ask you this. I don't know how much you've paid attention to it, and if you tell me, Ariane, I've been out of the game. I'm out. Do you think the scene is healthier now or back then? And by back then, I mean 2013 to 2016, 2017. Because that's when I was coming up. As an amateur, no one knew who I was, but I was checking the Spire rankings when I finally get my recognition. And I was checking everybody, and I was looking at every Knuckle Junkies article.
That'd be hard for me to say, because I'm, again,
out of the game?
Yeah, I couldn't really judge on how it is now. I do know. I don't know that it just seems like as time went on, the difference when I first started is like the difference between the undercard amateurs and the main card pros was cavernous. And then as things went on, that just started. It's kind of started blending, a lot more.
Meaning the amateurs have gotten better.
Or the pros got worse, or I don't know. Like I said, it was just about I just.
But back in the day, it was
It
clear.
just seemed like and I don't know if like I said the the coaching was better, because you had Steve looking out for his guys, you had Mike looking out for his guys, you had Knogle over in the Granite City guys doing his, you know what I mean? And so you had down Eric Irvin and Alex White and those, and so, guys.
Dude, Alex White, that's another guy.
Those guys a little more
Jesus.
Yeah, that was fun. We're doing road trips down there.
He's also a very sweet guy, Alex White.
Yeah, if you could ever drag him up here. I mean, you want to talk about the guy, I mean, he
especially
was homeless.
Especially considering his story.
Worked at McDonald's, ate nothing but McDonald's
I need to
for
reach
like
out
a long
to
time, But he was always so self-conscious, about his speech and everything like that,
Who cares?
Well, sure, easy for you, Slickster.
I know, very fair. I'm a cunt.
You grew up in a fucking shack in the woods down in Farmington, and speech impediment all your life, and probably been made fun of and all that shit.
You want to know why I say that though? Because of that. Because he's like, I remember every interaction I had with the guy. I mean, here standing before me is this killer, right? And just
tough kid,
cream of the crop though, but like such a nice individual, like the kind of guy that you would love to introduce. Like
yeah, you would. I mean, I didn't know him personally, but just on the surface and conversations, you think
sweet guy.
Your bullshit detector, you're like pass.
Yeah, he's that nice guy.
Right.
And I think to myself, if there was ever a guy considering his story,
you can see where
success,
Joe would be like,
"Come on down, boy, I got
dude.
you."
Yeah.
His son now is like,
I'm sure,
absolutely
I'm sure.
legit. Yeah,
I'm sure
his son is scary.
No surprise,
dude. Honestly,
that was fun though. Eric Irvin and Alex and those guys. You know what I mean? So it was nice having those little pockets, and I think that maybe those guys looked after their guys a little bit. And
I want to kind of step
again,
on
Shamrock and Jesse taking his guys over at Finn. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I want to because I actually agree with you when you say like the depth of talent used to be vast between main event and first fight of the night.
Or
and
main card and
and I would still make the argument that like if you go to any show and you got like 0-0 amateurs, you're gonna get a certain level. But I will say, and I think what it is the amateurs getting better, because back in the day, I remember when I started, I only had wrestling, and there was nothing I could really watch on YouTube or anything like that. When I started fighting, I remember Anderson Silva knocking out Vitor Belfort with a front kick was like, holy shit, this is right. He kicked him right in the face, just right up the middle. Now the teep kick is like a staple in everybody's arsenal, right?
But how long ago was that?
Dude. I think a decade.
So there you go. A decade. Things move fast. Times
MMA
move fast,
is martial arts is I don't think there's ever been a sport that has advanced as fast as it has than mixed martial arts. Because back, 30 years ago, jiu-jitsu was enough.
Yeah.
Now,
or wrestling in a strong right hand.
Yeah. Now jiu-jitsu is like the barrier to entry. Like you need to have at least one martial art, right? So you started Knuckle Junkies. Forgive me.
Yeah.
You
So we got that going, launched it out, and we kind of just went with the determination. We're humble. And we don't know, and we're going to cover it all. We're going to try to cover as much as we can.
When you say cover as much as you can,
like
St. Louis area,
yeah.
What is the boundaries that you're thinking?
We tiptoed one time over into Belleville just to see what was going on there, and if it was, what I mean. But mostly St. Louis, because at the time there was enough going on between Fight Hard and Shamrock and
there were multiple
Rumble
promotions.
Time and
Jim
of course
Jenkins,
Pat, Cage Championships. That was really cool. We saw, we covered Steve Berger fighting.
Yeah.
Out of Cage Championships.
There were so many promotions back then.
So,
That's a story unto itself.
But, we went out there with just the determination. We're just going to cover as much as we can, just to first get the lay of the land, be humble, find out what we can, and then kind of start narrowing it.
And finding your niche?
Or just finding what's worth our time.
That's a good way to describe it. How many people are
But thankfully at that time, we were all kind of just young in our families, and it was,
that's what I was going to ask. Is like when you guys started, like how many people made up Knuckle Junkies? It was you, Matt Frazier, who else?
Chris Ott, we got to give him a lot of credit, like I said, for a lot of the visuals.
The graphics and stuff.
The
for
graphics,
the website.
yeah, anything and then just the layout of the website, which again, it's still up, folks. So if you want to show your kid,
We're gonna post all.
when I was like a badass back in 2017 or whatever. And,
are you gonna keep that up forever?
I guess I don't know. I guess Matt still. I don't know how it even works.
Someone's paying for the domain.
So. But yeah,
God
so
bless
it was us.
Matt Frazier.
It was us.
I'm starting to GoFundMe for that.
Here's a guy who needs to sit in this seat. And he's got a better memory than I. But no, it was us three, and we had a guy who takes some photos every now and then, and we kind of Jim Range obviously helped out a lot once we got to know him a little bit,
Also a photographer.
Right? Yeah. Sorry, but yeah. So it was just mostly us three, and then at one point in time, after a few years, even Chris backed out, and then for the last 4 or 5 years, maybe it was just kind of a 2-man operation as far as like.
You and Frazier.
Yeah. And then we would, not too many people would write. Nobody would nobody would want to jump on.
Would write sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would help out with interviews. Jordan would help out with some
yes,
articles.
Absolutely. But
when we started Two Pros No, I remember we partnered with you guys for the annual awards.
Mm-hmm. Those were fun. I was looking through this. Yeah, the annual, that was fun. And we let the people vote.
Yeah. Which maybe not the best way.
But you know what I mean? We were just to make it, hey,
democracy,
whatever, or just to let them talk, and it was great. We did. I clicked on one, scrolling through, and we did like a pro rankings of all the pros in St. Louis.
No.
And we didn't get that many comments, but it's kind of cool. It was like Brad Carey commenting. It was before Brad Carey was a promoter. He's like, "Oh, Michael Chandler, could go to High Ridge, Bellator champ," and Roger.
For what, St. Louis Fighter of the Year?
No, it was just the ranking. Who's the top top 10 pros right now?
Area?
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
But again, it was just kind of cool clicking on that. And say, oh shit!
It's so crazy how time passes now. He's running NFA.
Right. That's what I mean. But it was, and that's just what we did. And Frazier was great with coming up with ideas, and I was just sniffing out feature stories when I could. I love doing. I did really probably the first story anyone's ever did on Mike England. The referee.
Rest in peace.
Yeah, stuff like that. So,
what was the most enjoyable part of this journey with Knuckle Junkies? Was it going and watching the fights, getting to know the fighters, writing the stories? What would you, when you look back and you say, man, I really miss that part? Mm-hmm.
That's a good question. And maybe it's a chance for me to use my, what do I call it? What's a pie sheet or pie, 30 pie chart. There you go. It's like 33% this.
Yeah, do it.
22, I'm just saying. But I mean, it'd be something like that. You know what I mean?
So
it'd be hard to be like one thing. But I mean, it was all fun, and getting the reaction of like that Saturday morning, and seeing the likes or the shares and all that, that was
seeing
fun.
The metrics with everything.
Yeah, and then after a while too, it's like again, we were well received. You know what I mean? And so
I don't know a single person who had a single bad thing to say.
And
about
so, and just to be like, go to places and people be like, "Hey, fucking blah," you know what I mean? And that kind of stuff.
Did you enjoy that?
Well, that's what I mean. There's so much about it I liked. So much about it,
So the
people wearing the gear, seeing the gear in the cages. Fighters wearing the gear,
the Knuckle Junkies shirts and stuff,
and caps and all that stuff. It was a blast. It just kind of ran out of steam.
Ooh,
at that time. Well, just the scene in general, just kind of there for a while, and you can look. I guess it's like kind of like pre-COVID, maybe 2019. I don't know when. I didn't look when the last article published, but it was before NFA kind of was getting its ground, and Cage Champs is. Patrick had just
You're
kind of...
talking about the scene of MMA scene.
Yes, yeah. Just kind of lost its... And it just seemed like for like 2 years straight, I'm writing about SFC and Julius going somewhere regionally.
One of the last articles you wrote was actually about me at Shamrock when I fought...
Yeah, that's on me,
I should remember everybody I fought. Listen, man, CTE's a hell of a
Sure,
joke.
whatever.
It was a great fight.
Yeah, anywho. But
No,
yeah. So it was just kind of... It was like it was getting kind of mundane.
Ooh, okay, but let's talk about that. When you say it's getting mundane, is it getting mundane because you were doing the same thing for so long? So, like, let me ask you this question. Because I know at the time, I think it was like Shamrock and NFA was just getting rebranded by.
Barely getting up and running.
So it's basically
trying to get anything
Shamrock
consistent.
and like nothing else for a while. So do you think it was the scene was kind of losing its steam because it was just one promotion? Do you think that the number of promotions would have kept that fire going? Or do you think it was the fighters, the reception of? Because, like, let me ask you this. If Shamrock does 12 shows a year, one show every month, that's a good number volume.
Yeah.
If it's Shamrock or if it's NFA, like, I mean, for you, what does that matter? Or does it matter?
It did matter because, like, when we started, there was, the different shows kind of had a little different flavor.
And that was enticing to you?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, just a change of venue.
Yeah, change of venue, change of guys, you know what I mean? Certain guys wouldn't fight for Finney, so they'd fight for Rumble Time. Certain guys wouldn't fight for
Rumble Time. They'd fight
MMA or fight hard, or even when Kane took over, but they would fight. So just the variety. Variety is the spice of life. So
it got very political with the fight scene locally. I remember when I was coming up amateur, I fought for Jim Jenkins a lot. And
love Jim. I was looking back on my little podcast we did. God, it's so fucking cumbersome to do. We only did 10 episodes. But
podcast back then?
I had one that I did. We had a show too we did online with Dan O'Connor and John Mankey.
Yeah, John Mankey.
I'd love to talk about him, man.
Mankey?
What a guy. Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. What an original. I mean, you want to talk I have no idea, but you want to talk about somebody who kind of like, because the fun part about it, who Brian Campbell is? He's like Luke Campbell's, or
yes.
Luke Thomas. He calls combat sports the red light district of sports.
Yeah.
I love that. I love it because it's kind of true.
It's kind of true.
But one of the first guys who kind of like grabbed my attention in this red light district was John Minky, and just talking to him and like his brain and how it worked and how much he knew and how even the people back then called him the wizard, And it's
well,
just
dude, like I remember Court Wall, and he had a pretty good gym that was coming up. I believe it was like
all those St. Charles guys respected him, and
yeah, I remember John came down to St. Charles MMA all the time and like to train with us and everything, specifically jiu-jitsu. But I mean, he still had like a bunch of guys under his belt, and then like just like a ghost, like didn't hear about
Kaiser
him.
Soze.
Yeah, I haven't heard about him in like the last until you brought him up. Maybe 8 years,
So anyway, yeah. So we had a little show with that, and we had a KJ, had a little Kate that was so cumbersome. But back to Jim Jenkins, I love that dude.
Really?
But you were talking about.
Why?
I don't know. He just seemed. I mean, I'm sure
because he's a polarizing figure.
I think so.
If anyone knows Jim, either they have like he owes me money or I love that guy, and it's like there's no in the middle.
Well, to me, I love him because maybe we didn't have much money involvement. We were just dudes, and I was promoting his events for free.
So he was enjoying that.
So I thought he was a great matchmaker. He shot me straight. I mean, maybe he had a little car salesman swag to him. I don't know.
He did.
But I enjoyed talking MMA with him, and I enjoyed talking the scene with him. He was just always just kind of, I don't know, pissed off a little bit.
Well, I think the one mistake he made was, and this is something that I learned in hindsight, so I couldn't say that I had like this intelligence at the time, because I remember
he's the one that told everybody about you,
yeah,
right?
Well, Jim is how I got my start because. I trained at a JD.
I just trusted him. He like I said, his match. He match makes so well. I just kind of took his word. Like when he would talk about fighters, and
I also made it easy for him.
But
if you talk to any matchmaker that has ever worked for me, not a single one of them will ever tell you that I ever said no.
Right.
I remember when my fourth fight, my fighter backed out, and I had to bump up a weight class to fight Court Wall. Little did I know how tough that fight would have been. But I was like, yeah, sure, at Shady Jack's, or what have you. I guess what I'm trying to say is like. I do have an immense respect for Jim Jenkins because he's how I got my start. But looking back in hindsight, he made one fatal flaw, and that's he made that his only job. Every other person had something else. And that matchmaking and promoting was like, I do this on the side.
Yeah.
Even Brad and Marlene and Jesse Finney and Rob.
Yeah,
Jesse Finney and Rob have their own things, and then they run Shamrock FC. And then Brad and Marlene have their own things, and then they run NFA. It's just, I don't know if there's enough money in the local scene to justify like a full-time salary.
Yeah.
And I think when Jim first started, the money was rolling in. From what I heard, when Jim was doing the shows with like Sampo and those guys, like the money was there enough for him to like...
Those were fun shows.
To live off of.
Yeah.
And we were talking about the changing times for journalism. There's also a changing times for the promotions. And I remember him talking about like, you said that Knuckle Junkies ended because it kind of got a little stale because it was down to one promoter. But I remember when Jim Jenkins was complaining, it was because all these promotions were coming up. Jared Block was doing his thing.
Yeah,
Nemesis was doing their thing. Shamrock was doing their thing.
Yeah.
You had Fight Hard right down the street from the heart of St. Charles.
Yeah.
It was like, dude, it was tough for Jim. He had to compete.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I have a warm spot.
I mean, I don't want to say some of the things he said to me. You know what I mean? But yeah.
in confidence.
Right. Yeah.
I wouldn't
But
ask.
yeah, he was frustrated. He was frustrated because here's the. I mean, he'd put his time in it, and he. I mean, let's be kind of fair. He probably knew it better than most of the promoters.
I would agree with that.
So
He
I mean,
is
he's
still
just
to
kind of
this day
you know?
the best matchmaker I've ever seen.
Right. So.
Locally.
But yeah, that was back. I don't know how we got that with KJ and all that, but yeah, those were.
Well, because we were talking about like Jim Jenkins and all the promotions from back in
Yeah,
the day,
yeah.
and how the promotions started just like falling one by one. And here's the thing: you got to give Shamrock their credit. I mean, they've been able to, like, I don't know whether it was the connections they've had or the business relationships they've been able to produce, but I mean, they have stood the test of time.
They've done great. They've got a lot. They have I think an audience. So people are just going to. There are people who just go to Shamrock fights.
Well, what's crazy?
So that's kind of what you want.
Fun fact: whenever you have like all these sponsors and stuff like that, it's really easy to sell out a show because you're already giving them 100 tickets a show or whatever. I'm not saying that that's the case, but like, let's say, for instance, you have Knuckle Junkies promotions and you have 500 seats in that promotion, but you have a sponsor that's giving you enough money to justify 100 seats to them.
Yeah.
Well, then you know that any other show, you only have 400 seats that you actually have to sell, and that those 100 seats are either going to be like the same people, the company people, they give them to their friends, what have you, but those seats are going to be taken. Shamrock's done that. They've done a very good job of finding high-level sponsors that will kind of assimilate a lot of their crowd. And First Form is a big one, right? S2 Faction. It's like I know they give them a substantial amount of money, and it's like if your venue is 800 people, you actually only have to sell 400 tickets because maybe 1/3 to 1/2 of those tickets are already spoken for by the sponsors you have, and that's what I think a lot of promotions missed, if I do say so myself. They tried to sell tickets to people, and that was their only revenue model. And then sponsorship was like a secondary thing. If we can get a sponsor, right? The problem with that is the volume you're trying to do. If you have 4 promotions and in any given month you could have 2 or 3 shows and tickets are $50 a pop, it's a lot of money. Now people are starting to pick and choose where they're going to go, and there's only so much to go around, right? But Shamrock was able to kind of break that mold by saying, hey, half the show's already paid for by the time we even start the first fight, we know that half the tickets are already paid for. So we only have to sell the other half. And it's like, well, duh.
Yeah, well, good for them, right?
Good for them.
Right.
Say what you want about Jesse and Rob. They're good at what they do.
I think that's one thing with Knuckle Junkies too, is like yeah, Jesse paid for advertising, and
Oh, with Knuckle Junkies?
Yep, and then because we used to have a little revolving ad, that would kind of go around, and
I didn't know that.
some people did, yeah, some other
I'm glad he
promotions
did.
Yeah,
I'm glad he
other
should
people
have.
supported because nobody else fucking was.
Considering how much you
Well, it
guys
wasn't that.
covered for them, that's the least he could do.
Mike Rogers bought an ad.
Did he?
Yeah, well, again,
That
it was
was.
all out of support.
Yeah.
Because
You were
guess what?
providing a service.
Nobody else was. And that's why I was looking. We even had like a little Kickstarter drive. Couldn't even. We got just under our $2,000 goal. Said in the story.
Was money ever a factor in the dissolution?
Not really. It
of
just
it?
would have been nice. I mean, it was never a factor, man.
It was a product of passion.
Yeah. I always looked at it like I used to play in these fucking dirtbag rock bands and these shitty bars and stuff, and I just always kind of looked at KJ kind of like that. I mean, if I walked out of the back in those days, if I walked out with $100 in my pocket and been drinking beer all night and
Cool.
playing music, cool. You know what I mean? So Knuckle Junkies was just kind of a little further extension of that.
You were
know what I
doing
mean?
something that you like to do.
Had a blast, just having a blast most weekends doing it. You know what I mean?
But obviously that wasn't paying the bills. So like,
No,
this
well,
is
it was
something-
all like back. We're back to the Suburban Journal.
So you were doing the Suburban Journal and Knuckle Junkies
Oh
at the
yeah,
same
for
time.
you, yeah.
When did you leave the Suburban Journal?
I would have to look the dates. My son's 15 years old, so I don't know, like 12 years ago or something. I finally, like I said, back to where we started with the chopping of the newspaper industry. we as content creators on the editorial side, we always thought we were pretty safe, because they're always going to need something to fucking read or something to put on the website.
Joke's on you. Now people can't
Guess
read.
what? Well, right? Well, that's one thing too. Is like I look back at some of those articles I read. It's like, dude, they were long ass articles. There's no way people would read that now. But if
Brett,
you
I would. I'm like, you're not gonna make enough off me, but I would.
But I eventually got to the editorial department when they realized, hey, we don't need everything covered.
Oh no.
Hence, you know what I mean. So then I switched over to the Community News, which was this weekly newspaper in St. Charles, and basically then I just kind of wrote out my journalism years, which just ended this summer. And it was just nice. It was nice. It was featuring news. We never wrote anything controversial in it. It was all just about positivity. That kind of stuff. So it was just kind of a nice way to finish out the few years, because like I said, before I even got to St. Louis, I'd done city council meetings and school board meetings and political races.
You did the
and all
Lord's
that
work.
stuff. Yeah. I had my fill of that, and then that's hard ass work. It's fucking hard, and people don't pay for that now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you want to pay me to be like to cover the cops in St. Charles County? Okay, man, that's work. You know what I mean?
Because when you say that's work, meaning it's not necessarily interesting and enticing.
Well, it's work.
For
You can't just walk in and be like, all right, I'm the fucking guy. I'm here to cover, heard bad things. That you got to ingrain yourself and like show up and be, like I said, you got to be with these people at their boring, and also when it's and that's why when things are hitting the fan, they can trust in you.
Because you were there when
They're there when
you were there.
they're there when you
bottom.
covered. Hey, would you mind covering our fun run?
That's
You know
actually,
what I mean? Cool. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Hey, we got 2 dead, but yeah.
That makes sense, because I remember when I was a pro and you guys would interview me, I was like, fuck yeah, man. Because I remember when I was an amateur and no one knew who I was. You guys were the first ones that came up to me and put a microphone in my face.
Okay.
And it was funny because I didn't realize, like I said, same thing with Jim Jenkins, but same thing with Knuckle Junkies. I didn't realize how much I enjoyed it or how much value it added to me, because it was just kind of like always there.
Right.
And then when it was no longer there, it's like anything.
I used to say, what's the old saying?
You don't
if
know
a tree
a
falls
good
in
thing.
the wood, does it make a sound?
Well, no, you don't know a good thing until you don't have
So I was
it.
like, well, we were the fucking sound. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's a shame.
Yeah, you can say that happened, but you got you had the website saying that happened.
Would you ever bring it back? What would have to happen for you to want to bring it back? Or do you even want to bring it back?
I don't know. I'd have to be again inspired or get some kind of juices flowing. It wouldn't have to be. I don't know how young people consume things now. So
I think it's all social media.
You know what I mean? So I don't know. If a 2,000 word feature article on a girl who's overcome a bad upbringing to now fight for a promotion, if that's worth the 4 or 5 hours. You know what I mean? I don't know.
In a lot of ways, I think like audio and video has kind of superseded the written word.
Right, absolutely.
Even books, like I'll be honest with you, I have like my own library.
Mm-hmm.
I try to read books, but I'm finding myself more and more going to audiobooks simply because it's a way for me to multitask.
Right.
I can work and listen to an audiobook.
My wife's the same.
And I can consume the book that I would sit down and read. I just don't have the same time that I did. I right out of college, I used to take 45 minutes every day, and I would force myself to read whatever it was that I was reading.
Yeah.
Finance, politics, nonfiction, fiction, just to read.
Something.
Because it was something that my mom kind of instilled in me. Because she didn't know how to read until she was like older, until she came to the States. She didn't have a proper education. But now I find that it's increasingly difficult to set aside 45 minutes because my time as a 31-year-old man versus a 20-year-old man is just vastly more important. And I wonder if some of that is also for people in this go world where. Can I ask you a question?
Sure, let it rip.
When was the last time you had like a family dinner? Like you sat down with every member, like your wife and your 2 kids, and had dinner?
somewhat often, I would say. I
Really?
mean, it's just the four of us, so it's kind of easy to kind of wrangle us. But I would say at least within a week.
Dude,
You
me
know?
and my wife try to do it at least like once a week.
Yeah.
At least
Yeah.
once a week. But when I was little, that was like a daily
Yeah.
occurrence.
Oh yeah.
And it just seemed like we had, maybe it's because I was a kid, it just seemed like we had more time. We had more time for everything, more time to talk, more time to interact with
Well,
one another.
you sit down too. You talk about reading
time
that
to
reading that
read.
45 minutes. And you've got distractions that can light up at any
If
point
I don't
in
check my
time.
phone for 45 minutes, I now have to spend 20 minutes going through the notifications.
Or whatever, yeah, something like that. You know what I mean? Or even your brain's trained now to think, well, what have I missed? Or thinking off or already planning ahead to
I will tell you right now, I am that guy who's addicted to his phone because it's like everything to me. It's like work, it's the
Yeah.
interpersonals, it's all the businesses that I'm running. I am that guy who's addicted to that phone because it's so much of my life.
Yeah.
Now. And
Well, I mean,
I'm
that's the world.
cognizant of
That's the
it.
world, though. I mean, that's the world we live, and it's not going to change. Again, we talk about with the media gone south and all that. We're not reverting back. We're not reverting back to Little House on the Prairie. It's going to keep going.
So would Knuckle Junkies? Let me ask you this
So again,
question.
it doesn't answer. Would I bring it
would
back?
you ever bring it back?
Yeah, it's something that
Spurred that in
spurs
you.
it up, or we're not going to lie. You and I've talked about some things. I would gladly pass on the name to something that's kind of appetizing or whatever. But what
The conversations we've had, and I have no problem talking about it. If you have no problem talking about it, I essentially approached you and I said, hey, this was something that offered me a lot of value as a fighter, and I think it would do the community a justice to bring back. Now, I hate that I have to agree that I don't think it could come back in the same format.
Absolutely,
because times change.
Yeah.
And I floated to you.
And it's been already 5 years, I think, since we've done anything on it. So
Yeah.
in media,
That being said, though, the name still has value.
oh no, yeah, I mean, but in the way media is presented,
Yeah.
5 years is. 10,
I think it's
you
all
know.
audio visual now. It's like podcasts, interviews,
Right.
YouTube, Spotify. And for better and worse, right? I want to bring it back because of that value add, and because I feel if it was done slightly differently, it could be the hub for St. Louis MMA. It really could, because you guys had that unbiased. You would do a Shamrock event, a Nemesis event, a Cage Champs event,
Right.
whatever. You would go to this gym, that gym,
Right.
you talk about this fighter, that fighter. And in a lot of ways, when I started this podcast, I tried to steal or mimic that style here. Because, like, I'm a biased guy.
Right.
I have my
Well, yeah.
favorites and
I
all that.
almost mentioned when you were talking earlier about unbiased journalism, and there is an argument out there that there's no such thing. Everybody brings their own bias
into the written
into
word.
well, yeah, and just into anything. But you go back to where
No.
we're saying. Yeah, I get what you're saying, and that makes me feel good that you would pull any kind of ethos or anything that we did before into something that you're doing.
I think
But
I think you guys did a lot of things right.
yeah, well, I think so too, and I think it came, I'm not sounding arrogant, but it just came from that again, the journal. We just really shifted everything we were doing at the newspapers already, and just kind of brought that mindset or that kind of, integrity. I don't know, something like that. As far as again, you could giving everybody a kind of shot,
fair
for lack of
shake.
a word. Yeah.
I think that's why everyone has if you ask any fighter from my time, not a single person has a bad thing to say. And it's because of that, because you guys did do your due diligence. You did give everybody that same time under the light.
Or like there'd be a big card, when Bellator came, that was so awesome, man. I was looking back on that, the Kimbo Slice Shamrock event, and I was looking back on the articles on that.
And how many local fighters fought on that as well?
Well, and just what a cool event that was, and but anywho, yeah. And
Do you
just,
think
but
Bellator got enough credit for coming down as many times as it did?
probably not.
They did 3 shows in 3 years.
Yeah, and yeah. I mean, they kind of watered down a little bit.
I think
but,
that's the promotion.
But no, people kind of I don't know.
I remember that first
got used. That first show
Kimbo
was awesome.
Slice versus Ken Shamrock was sold out.
Yeah, that was great. And like I said, but I think again going back to what we did right was okay. So on that card, you had guys from all over, and like I said, and we would go and feature the guy from Hans, and we're going to feature the guy from St. Charles, and we're going to feature the guy from that. You know what I mean? That
You guys actually,
and that actually came again from the journal. To me, it was a piece of piss to get. Okay, I got fucking Eric Irvin's phone number. You know what I mean? Okay, blah blah blah. It was just like I was doing a coach interview.
You guys did stories on every bout, every local bout that was on the Bellator undercard. You guys would do a story on it, a feature.
Yeah.
This person
because
feature.
there's like locals against locals.
It was awesome.
Yeah, it was cool.
And you guys were also getting the credentials, right? You guys could go to Bellator.
Under
the media banner.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah.
Because when I asked Matt about because I talked to Matt, I'm like, hey man, what happened? You know what I mean? Matt told me that it was the UFC coming in, and you guys not getting credentialed for that. That was like, what the fuck?
Yeah, he likes to say that, but
just talking about, Frazier told me that the reason you guys kind of finally decided to kind of pull the trigger on calling it quits was when the UFC came into town, they didn't credential you guys, but they credentialed
some others, let's say.
Yeah.
I mean, that stung a little bit, I wouldn't say that was maybe the final straw or any of that. And before I jump into that, I would just say, speaking of the UFC, and from what I understand, I think have you been to any of the shows?
The UFC? When they're in town? Yeah, every single one.
Okay. And they've done nothing with Tyron as far as Jumbotron.
Isn't that crazy?
Now
that you say that, I never thought about that. But
right?
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
I remember when Mike Chandler would come in for Bellator, I mean, it was he would literally go, I'm coming home.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? And it was crazy. I did like that I will say that the last UFC, having
nice
Charles,
attendance and all
Sean,
that.
and
that's
and
great.
Buckley,
Great. Love that. Love
had a different
all that.
feel to it.
Well, that event should have had a little 4-minute
about Tyron.
montage about Tyron, and
why do you say that though? Just because it's his city?
It's his city, dude. It's a fucking champion. He defended it. I get it. Oh my God, he pissed off Dana. I mean, so that's boom.
Can I tell you something?
That's all that But that kind of finished. Well, I mean, whatever.
From the interactions that I've had, I've talked to people that are in the know. All that is they actually have a very great relationship.
Well, for whatever reason, he should deserve a little 4-minute thing, and you fucking bring his ass out and let him get a standing ovation.
Hey guys, thanks for coming to the show. We brought UFC to St. Louis.
Whatever, yeah, he's the fucking champ, and defended how many times?
I heard that Tim Lukinov, one of the reasons why the UFC hadn't come into town for the longest time was there was a fighter that passed out in the elevator from cutting weight, and Tim Lukinov did not sanction the fight. And the UFC brass came to Tim and said, and this is how cool of a guy Tim is. I had him on the podcast, and not once did he bring it up, not once did he say anything. The only reason I'm bringing it up now is because every other guy from the State Athletic Commission, after they watched that episode, was like, you need to know this, Ariane, because he's too nice of a guy to say it. There was a fighter that passed out cutting weight. He didn't sanction the fight, and the UFC came down to Tim and said, if you don't do this, we won't be here for a while. Tim said, I'd rather do what's right than what's profitable. So say what you want about
So Tim what fight did he do that?
This was years ago.
Oh, okay.
This was years ago. I believe the fighter was...
But it wasn't a UFC promotion.
No, it was UFC. It was
in St. Louis?
UFC. It was... I forget the fighter's name. But yes, it was precisely that. And there was a UFC event. It was. Wasn't there? Way back in the day?
Before the one that came...
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I don't know. There weren't...
I need to look into it. I don't know if it was in St. Louis, but I know it was in the state of Missouri because it involved Tim Lukinov.
Okay.
Anyway.
Gotcha.
Beside the point. So, to your point, it does not shock me that they didn't.
Okay.
But do you feel that they should have?
Absolutely. I think they should have. And like I said, that's kind of one of kind of the opportunity. I mean, Tyron was great for us. We're talking about Knuckle Junkies. So, I mean, yeah, he was great for us. I know he kind of rubbed a lot of feathers in the St. Louis MMA scene for whatever reasons. None of my business. And
he seems to have remedied some of those relationships.
I think so. I mean, that's awesome and great. And but he, like I said, he was always great for us. With the gym open. I mean, John Jones came in and he gave me the heads up. And I got to, I hustled my ass down to.
Because he's like, hey, John Jones coming to town.
Yeah, I'm like,
talk to
you
him and do an
goddamn right
article.
I do.
Wow,
I
Tyron did that
dropped
for
whatever
you.
I did. You know what I mean? I think I may even canceled something I was covering for the Journal. It's fuck John Jones, man.
Yeah. The youngest UFC champion in history.
The GOAT, man.
The GOAT. He's fighting Stipe.
Baddest man who's ever walked the planet.
What do you think of that fight, out of curiosity?
I think John smashes him.
I think he takes him down and mauls him.
Just smashes. Stipe looks so. Everybody's old. Everybody's old. Even
Stipe
John's
doesn't
old
even,
now.
Stipe doesn't
but
even look like he's
John's
having
just so
fun.
smart. He's not going to lose. And I'm not saying he can't lose. I'm not saying.
Listen, if I were a betting
But
man, I'd put my money on John as well.
Sure.
I was watching the press conference the other day, and Stipe just looks like he's like not even happy to be there. If
How
that
can
makes
you
sense.
be? You've done it. I mean.
What do you mean? You're getting paid millions of dollars,
Sure,
brother.
sure, but I mean,
I've done
again,
far worse for far less and been
the
happy.
fire in the belly, man. The Thomas Hearns thing.
I agree with that.
You know what I'm saying?
I
That's way gone.
you know,
It's a special few that can still keep it. But like I said, I mean, for Stipe, and who knows? Stipe, lands a big shot and knocks out John Jones. What a way to piece out your career.
I don't see that happening.
I don't either.
I just don't see that happening.
I'm just saying. So
if it was like a Francis Ngannou type character, I could see that happening. Stipe's just not known for his one-hitter quitter. Don't at me for doing.
But yeah, okay. So that was a bummer. But at that time, that card
wasn't the final nail in the coffin.
Not really. And at that time, it wasn't that sexy of a card. You know what I mean? The Bellator card was way sexier, and Jesse Finney hooked me up plenty on that. And every time Bellator came in, the Bellator crew made sure Knuckle Junkies
was on the media pass.
Whatever you need to do, whatever this and that. You know what I mean? So yeah, I mean the UFC thing kind of stung a little bit, but at the same time, it was like a fight night. And it was at the same time UFC was kind of getting watered down. And so the card in itself, now I'm not saying that now the card that was past year, the one you referenced was Sean.
But that was also because they stacked it with St. Louis guys.
But I mean,
and Buckley went in there and called his shot.
Awesome. But I'm saying if you want to reference the show that the first time, UFC, you look at that cop. I don't know.
It wasn't necessarily something that.
Look at the fight. I can't even recall anybody who fought on it. I mean, it wasn't. And they didn't even do much local, if any local guys.
They didn't know.
On all that. So to say that was the final straw, again, it just kind of it was more of just the malaise, and maybe life was changing, and then
I wanted to talk about that too because I could tell you
COVID hit,
yeah, exactly.
blah blah blah,
So for my
momentum just ceased.
For my own life, when I had my daughter, like a lot of people ask me why I quit fighting, and I was like, I didn't quit fighting because I lost. I quit fighting because my life changed.
Yeah.
When I was a young guy, single, and I had 10 hours a day free that I could do whatever the hell I want. I have so much responsibility now. That's kind of the other question I want to ask you because, we're talking about 2010. Your kids were little, right? And now they're adults, or almost adults. Actually, pretty much adults.
18, she's adult, right?
She's an adult. Does the prospect of starting this up again kind of hindered by where you're at in life now versus where you were when you started it? Or do you have more free time now?
Well, I mean, I think, I popped over. I've been to a few Shamrock shows at Ameristar. My buddy Mike Garrett takes care of me, and we go over there and have a blast every time. And then I saw Brad's show,
NFA,
hanging out to you at the factory. That was just so cool, just to see that, see the show at that venue. I mean, 6 nights before, I saw my favorite band in the world, Black Crowes, play there, and just see Brad, and whether that made money or lost money, I don't know. Again, I always just blank out on that part of the
they did well
aspect.
For themselves.
Okay, cool. You know what I mean? But just to see it, the venue, blah blah blah, the fights and all that was great. But it seems like a more manageable scene as opposed to like when we started, when Rumble Time, Fight Hard, Shamrock, Cage Champs.
When you say manageable, you mean?
There's like now it's like Shamrock and NFA, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's.
Do you think that's the number? Do you think there could be more?
Could there? I don't know. I know nothing about
the scene anymore.
Right.
So let's talk about that.
I mean, I know Wolf's Den. I know St. Charles.
If you were to start up Knuckle Junkies again, just for devil's advocate.
Okay.
You've been out of the game for a little bit. Is there any sort of are you afraid that perhaps too much time has elapsed, or do you think that you could easily get back into the groove of things?
I need to find like again. I don't know how people would consume it. Like I said,
I think
I know what I'm good at.
think
And
video
I'm
format.
good at writing, and I'm good at certain other things. I know I'm not good at fucking TikTok or whatever else.
no, you're
and-
long form, brother.
You know what I mean? So that's what I mean. So I don't know. I would need help or whatever. That's what I'm saying. As opposed to just me and Frazier, or me, Frazier, and Chris, and somebody supplying us some cool photos.
I
You
could
know what
also
I
be
mean?
biased when I say
Because
this.
that's basically what we ran on was just
Yeah, but I could also be biased when I say this. But like,
And-
I can tell you, for me, I solely consume long form now. The longer the video,
But
the
you're
longer
older
the
now.
podcast. You say I'm older, but I'm only 31.
Right,
And I
but-
and I know that I always say that I'm older too. Don't get me wrong. Your demographic is not going to be like your TikTok Zoomer. That's not
True.
what it is. But that's also not the people that are fighting. Those kids are still young, and they're going to age and get a little bit more mature, and then they'll start
Yeah.
finding time for these things. I think, and here's the thing: I could. Be
I mean, it
completely
could
wrong.
totally. You could. Truth be told, we could relaunch it, and people would start reading
I think it would be consumed.
100%.
I think. It
But
would be
do I
consumed.
want to put that energy towards it?
That's the question.
Especially
Especially if it's like a product of passion.
But and
that
again at that
passion might
time,
not be
but you know
there.
what I mean. It was like carrying the load 90% of the content load. You know what I mean. So it's you know what I mean. Different animal.
That's why when I approached you, I did it in the manner that I did, and I told you like I have reverence for the Knuckle Junkies name, and that like I want to do something that you did, but I don't want to. I don't want to do it separate. That's kind of why I
and I don't know if
contacted
you start getting into the fucking slap shit and all that, to make it, I mean,
I want to cover all combat, even the jiu-jitsu shows and stuff like that. I want to do what you did, but just like kind of.
but dude, I
spruce it
tell you
up.
what, it just fucking, it's a time eater,
For sure.
you know
But
what I
that's
mean?
the thing.
And,
If it's
and,
you,
and not to
me-
toot, and not to toot my own horn, but you had somebody who had, by that time, 15 years of journalism experience. So you want to talk, okay, you need
Turning
me,
around
you
a
need me
story.
to chunk out 300 words on,
You used to watch the fights on a Friday or Saturday.
No, I'm
and
just
you
saying,
would-
like, or whatever.
But you would post the stories that next
but
morning.
even you need, and the way we did things was like, okay, shit, we need fresh content. So we need stuff on Tuesday. Okay, there's fights this weekend. How about a little preview Wednesday? Okay, so somebody who could chunk out a 300, 400 word article on a 15-minute phone call
with someone. Yeah, that was you.
is easy, you know what I mean, to do. You know what I mean? Now, do I want to keep on,
Well, would you do it if
And-
it was as you wanted to do it? Meaning, because here's what I think: if we were to bring it back, it would once again be something of passion, and I think there could be some money made, but not enough money to compensate people adequately for the amount of time that they put
right,
in.
which that's fine.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, again, it goes back to the dirtbag rock band days. I'm all about that.
So the passion's still there. The passion is still there.
The passion is
You
providing.
still love the sport.
The passion is providing something creative to an audience that accepts it.
Oh.
I mean, if you want, now we're finally, however, hour into it. I mean, basically,
hour. I'll get the deep dark secrets.
exactly. But I mean, if you really want to get into like journalism and writing, I mean, all of that stuff came from me in my early 20s trying to, shoehorn my way, to me thinking that if I could get paid to write, I'd beat the system, Again, things were different in the 90s, But and so I don't know where I'm going with that, but it was just to like I said, if I can provide something that's creative that that people will consume, that's what gets me going,
I think we could bring it back.
Again, yeah, there's no doubt there's no doubt we could bring it back, and there's no doubt that people would flock to it, and there's no doubt that even if we did it cookie cutter, same like we did before, people would let me finish. People would still like it and share it on Facebook, and Jimmy Joe from St. Joseph, Missouri, could share it and see I went to the city and blah blah blah, and all this, and that's how it happened, man. And Facebook was coming up, and the same kind of times we were, and it'd snowball from there. And I think it would totally pick up. But again, do I want to go? And the good thing about it, sorry to stop, but I mean, there's not as many events. If it's spread out, but.
So that's my thing. I think that the workload was too much for like just you and Matt.
Yeah.
First of all,
but we were kind of inspired by that, or the
really?
challenge. Yeah, we
can fucking
again
do
we
it.
were young and just like, yeah, we got that, we got this. I'm like, and he'd be like, and he, we had the calendar and everything, and again it was to say it was nothing for me to talk to Jesse Finney for 15 minutes and throw together a Thursday article for Shamrock 276, or talk to him on Monday and maybe feature 2 other kids and maybe not even leave my house and just do phone interviews and chunk that into 500-word feature. And I get a photo from Jim Range, who shot the kid 3 months ago. Boom.
I think it's feasible.
I'm just saying, that's how we did it.
Yeah.
It was just that easy. Now, do I want to do that though anymore? I'd much more rather spend my time on an article that is interesting, a featurey article that's kind of like how I ended the journalism career. Just something that's a little more.
You don't want to do like a
featurey
recap
based.
or a promo. You want to do a story.
Yeah,
On an individual or an
or
event.
something, or like a
What
or like an idea.
What would be some of the things that
like-
would entice you? Like,
I-
was it the
not-
person?
The person, and it's always about the people.
Yeah.
It's always about the people.
To what? Tell their story?
Yeah.
I can resonate
Man, that's
with
all.
that.
That's where all the good shit is.
Where do you find
It's
that
not
passion
me.
in that? Why? Because you're an individual who finds passion in telling other people's stories. And I feel like that's like a kind of like a selfless act. Almost.
Yeah. Well, look what I do now. It's just
What do you do now?
work with special needs kids at high schools.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So but yeah, I'm more interested. That's the fun part. Is there because especially if you find a story that's there's the old thing like you flip the phone book and boom, everybody has a story.
I agree
And they
with that,
do.
actually.
They do.
That's funny that you say that because that's actually what I say about this podcast. I
Mm-hmm.
go, everybody's interesting. Everybody is interesting. You just have to find the right questions to ask.
So, when you find a, fighter that's, Chael Sonnen had that great quote or whatever, the punches and kicks, only go so far or something. You got to find something that
The
interesting.
the unique identifier of that individual.
Yeah, or something. Yeah, some sort of struggle they've overcome, or like Ashley or whatever. Any of the ones we did features on, it was usually someone that was somewhat interesting. It's not just
When you did
fucking
these,
kick-ass fighter.
when you did these stories, and forgive me if I ask it in an obtuse way, but like you're trying to grow Knuckle Junkies, but I'm getting this sense that you're also trying to grow these fighters.
Trying to grow the fighters, also doing things that, again, to be selfish, but it's like, okay, what interests me,
It's not
and
selfish.
and then also too at the same time, I'm thinking with the journalism, in journalism that they talk
but
about.
Brett, that's not.
They talk about the reverse pyramid.
The upside down. Okay.
Okay, so flip over a pyramid. What's the most important? So put that the biggest. Don't go to the small. You know what I mean? So it's just like, okay, what is most important this week, this month, whatever.
But I don't think anyone would find that selfish that you're doing a selfless act, but you're prioritizing what you're interested in. That's like me saying like, oh, I'm gonna collect cans on the side of the road, but I'm gonna prioritize the Coke cans because I like Coke.
True.
It's like
true.
I'm still collecting the
True.
cans on the side
Yeah,
of the road.
true.
I'm
Yeah.
still doing like a net positive.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Oh yeah,
It's
yeah.
like, I
but-
like this fighter over this fighter because he has a better story. You're still doing the story on the fighter.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's,
True. No. I'm just saying, but yeah.
And every interaction I've had with you has been always of that, like, I always used to think that Knuckle Junkies was bigger than it really was because you guys kind of acted like it was. And,
It looked that way.
well,
And credit to Chris with the website. It looked very.
you guys were super professional
Yeah.
and unprofessional at the same time, and it worked.
Yeah.
Like you and Matt were just some guys doing something out of passion.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
the product was so polished, and then everyone was so proud of it.
It helped we were a little mature.
Yes.
That helped.
Fair. And the more you
And
did, the
again,
more repertoire you'd have.
Yeah, again, you had me, 10, 15 years of experience. Chris already had 10, whatever years of experience doing graphic design. Matt was like kind of a Swiss Army knife. He even got into writing. He got into
Still is a Swiss Army
Well, so I'm saying
knife.
designing once Chris pieced out. Okay, well, Matt started designing things and all that, and Matt designed all of our gear, and stuff we ever sold, or you saw the kids wear.
merchandise.
You saw the kids wearing, So, you know,
You guys did so much value for us. I don't.
it was fun. It was great. We had a great time.
You did kind of breach on the topic. I don't know if you'd want to talk about it. I had no idea that you told me that you got a new teaching job, but you didn't tell me that it was with special need kids.
Yeah.
That's a big swing.
It is. Well, I mean, it kind of started a couple of years ago.
Forgive me. Are you done with journalism? Maybe?
Yeah, I mean, maybe if I probably, I don't know.
Yeah.
Again, it's kind of nice, and at this age, or when I've experienced what I've experienced, just to I'd have to find something to entice me, and I doubt, the way journalism is going, there'll be anything local that will, entice me. And it's been a new avenue. It's invigorated me a little bit, So, yeah, it kind of started a couple of years ago. While I was still working at the community news, I just had a lot of downtime in the afternoon, and I started working recess at my local elementary school where my kids went and all that stuff. And they had these little small shifts, like 10 to 2 kind of things, and I was doing my community news stuff. And again, I've been doing this stuff so long, I could manage it at the back of my hand.
You were efficient with your time.
Exactly. Highly efficient with my time. So I'm like, let's try this out. And I dipped my toe in there, and it was just an eye opener, man. I know a lot of guys like to talk about making a difference and all that, and it's just, man, you step into a school and people like to talk about schools and how things should be done and ran and all that. Yeah, well, and it's taxpayer dollar, as they should, right? Yeah. You're Mr. Right? So
don't go down a road you don't want to go down.
You sit around and you kind of see how things, it's how things are ran.
Eye opening.
Yeah, it was, and it was eye opening too. Being a man in an elementary school.
Why do you say that? Because there's so many.
Because
women?
they just see women, and even from the bus drivers to the cafeteria to the teachers, obviously, to the administrators.
I'll say
it's women,
I'll say this: I only coach high school wrestling.
Right.
But that is actually not something I see at the high school in which I coach.
That was a big change for me when I made the switch.
But
I couldn't
I could
believe it.
see how because here's the thing: if you told me to coach wrestling, I'm your guy. But if you told me to teach first graders, I don't know anything, I'd be like, guys, you gotta
recalibrate.
There's much better
everything.
people more qualified for this than me. I'll handle your adolescence. I can't do the early age. And by the way, I don't want to get too much into gender and anything. I can tell you for a fact that my wife is better at that with my daughter than I am. But I know that when my daughter hits a certain age, I'm going to carry that baton and I'm going to run with it. Because when she gets to the age where I can have really in-depth why, who, where, what, dude, I can't wait for those years. But right now, when it's I want pasta, I'm like, oh man, go talk to your mom. I'm not your guy. But sorry, so you're working these recesses and you're noticing this is a very feminine role.
Yeah, and just the reaction to me, man, was pretty
Their
evident.
reaction to you or the kids' reaction?
The kids reaction. Yeah, it was pretty evident. And so then
explain that though. What do you mean by pretty evident? They would be like, "Oh, it's a guy."
Yeah, absolutely.
Really? Wow,
absolutely.
That blunt?
Yeah, and some would just be like, "Oh," and others are cool. You know what I mean? But others, you're just like, "Oh," and all up on you and hugs and elementary schools.
Different.
You gotta be ready for that. I wasn't quite ready for all the loviness of it. But you do. And then, so I went from there, and they asked, because I have a son with special needs, and I spent a lot of time with behavior therapists and stuff like that. They asked me to move into what was called the what's called the ED room, which is short for emotional disorders. So in elementary school at our district, you have essential skills, which maybe be kids with like Down syndrome or cerebral palsy, like my son. Essential skills. They have problems with essential skills, whether it's bathroom,
Motor functions,
holding,
what have
right?
you.
Okay, I was in the emotional disorder room, where on the surface everything is fine and dandy, but whether it's trauma, whether it's extreme autism, whether it's this or that, and these were kids who just had a hard time, like even, some classes they could stay in, some they couldn't. We worked a lot on social skills, stuff like that.
With specifically, once again, elementary meaning.
Elementary meaning K through 5.
Okay. And this was
This was like a year ago.
So forgive me. You started as just
recess, just to kind of do it, just to see what's up.
Chaperone.
Just to see, go out.
Sure the kids don't scrape their knees.
Yeah, see what's going on.
How did it progress? Did someone
because
come to you?
they knew, because it was the same school that my kids had went to. They'd known about my son who had special needs. There was this particular kid in particular who got me into it, a first grader, and I tell you what, man, this kid, it was like Con Air. When this kid would come to school, as far as on the walkie-talkies, and it's like the bus is arriving. Okay, here's entering the hall. Entering the hall.
Everybody?
Prep everybody.
Wow.
Yeah. Be like, I'd make sure to go in there and remove all the shit that he could reach.
Wow.
Because he's going to come in and start.
Going
And then once I kind of found out.
Forgive me, because some people that are listening might not understand the nuance of what you're trying to say. This individual kid.
Yeah.
No, forgive me.
Yeah, I want clarification. Absolutely.
This individual kid had what? Special needs so severe.
He had experienced some extreme trauma, and once I've kind of found out his whatever name and whereabouts, and little journalism skills, found out that as a kindergartner, before he came to our school, he was in a car with mom and grandma at the park. And brother comes screeching in and blocks them in with his car and proceeds to walk around with a handgun and is threatening mom, grandma, and soon-to-be kindergartner. That's just a little snapshot of his life, And so when I was asked, like, hey, you want to check out this room, and I think you could be good here, and there's, And I saw this kid, and he was in there, and he went from 0 to 100, and got like ultra violent, and was like grabbing this teacher's hair, like full.
How old is this?
He's first grader.
Okay,
he was a kindergartner at the end of his kindergarten year. Is when I first saw him.
Jesus.
And
forgive me because I'm trying to understand the nuance. Nothing. I want to be careful of the words I use here. Nothing physically. Is he ailed in any way, or was this 100% trauma based?
100%. Yeah.
Wow. So
there's nothing like physically.
Happens, and now this
kid has just experienced so much.
Some shit.
Yeah. And then now he, and so that was the end of my recess semester, spring, the end of his kindergarten semester, spring, that I was introduced to him. And I was just kind of like, man, wow. But at the same point in my head, I don't want to sound like a macho dick or whatever, but I'm like, okay, if this kid's going to swing at anybody in this fucking school, there's only one. I'm like one of three, literally three males, maybe, in this whole school, and it's the largest elementary school in the state. And I'm like, well, fuck, let him swing on me. I don't care. He's in first. You know what I mean? And again, through my son and through behavior therapy, I know how to keep my emotions. I know how to, all this stuff, And that's how it snowballed. That's how I ended up in that room. And I worked with him for a little bit as first grade year, and things just got so out of control. They ended up sending him to the alternative school, but I stayed, and worked with the other kids. Do
you by any chance know Karen Simoncelli? Did you know that she actually works at these alternative schools where she essentially prepares these kids for adulthood?
Yeah. That's kind of as I notice now at high school. Now I'm in essential skills. Okay, slightly different. These kids, a lot of them have motor issues or what have you, nonverbal. A lot of my students are nonverbal. but it's all about
Forgive me. What does that mean when you say these
nonverbal,
kids are
like
not, they don't talk at all? So they
either some will have devices that they're pretty good at, and
there's,
so
there's no physical reason they can't. It's all.
I'm sure. I don't know.
Forgive
Their
me.
right. I don't.
Just so you know, I'm ignorant to this.
I get
so
you.
If
I get
ask
ask
questions,
as much as you
yeah,
want. I
yeah,
don't get. That's
sorry.
why we're here. That's why we're here.
I just don't want you to be like, oh,
No.
you don't know
No,
this.
no.
Yes, I
Yeah.
don't know this.
Oh.
Forgive me.
No, like I mean, it's a wide range of them. You know, quote unquote non. Meaning they can't. They may grunt. You know, I mean, they grunt and make audible sound. You know, sounds like
to
that.
Try to communicate.
Right,
Is
and
it-
some have devices, right? That are really high tech, and this one in particular, my buddy. I mean, he can, you know,
Have a conversation with
I
you.
want to go to lunch. You know, sorry, it's not time for lunch yet, Connor. I want to play basketball. You know, he can do. Others, they hate their device, and they may use it. I want to go to the bathroom, and that's the only time they'll tell you they want to do it. Others use some kind of different kind of sign language. You know what I mean? So that's been a real adjustment for me. It was like working with kids now who don't speak.
So, you said that there was this first grader. So you started as like a part-time kind
Still.
of chaperone at recess.
Right.
And then there was this first grader, specifically the one that was
Yep.
because of trauma,
Yep.
a little bit more, had violent tendencies or could
Hyper violent.
go off.
Hi, go ahead. Yeah, hyper violent kid. I mean,
How did this then result in you now taking this as an occupation?
I think I'm good at it. It's a lot of times it reminds me of my early days of journalism, in that the days are unpredictable. You know, I just don't know. I mean, you may walk around the corner and
There's a story.
especially, or walk around the corner and there's a kid banging his head on the fucking wall, or you know what I mean. One of my kids, you know what I mean. There's you know, there's just any kind of thing that can. So you know, yes, some days are the same, and we do have schedules, but within that schedule, especially when dealing with these students, you know, that things can escalate or change or
Do you mind
deal with things that you wouldn't think you were dealing with.
if you don't mind? This is probably one of the first times I've asked this on the podcast. I want to ask questions pertaining to your son. I'm not going to ask anything personal, like information or anything like that. I'm talking about high level.
Right.
So you have a daughter and a son. The
Right.
daughter is older. The son is younger.
Yep.
When you had your son, when was it that you were? When was it that you guys knew there was some sort of ailment present?
Evident. We were pretty far along in the pregnancy. My wife just had a feeling something wasn't right. Ran to the emergency room, whatever. The heartbeat was steady, and that's what made them worry. You know, as opposed to kind of going up and down.
So there was no heartbeat.
There was a heartbeat, but it's like it wasn't
it was
fluctuating.
like
it was
beats
just
per minute's
kind of
40.
Yeah, just
And
40,
it doesn't
just
fluctuate.
40,
Okay.
yeah.
And
You know,
that
and
is-
they're like, oh man, you know, he had the cord and all, you know, things all going on. You know,
No.
yeah.
So it was a complication internally.
Yes.
What did they? And once again, if I ask questions that you don't want to answer, by all means, be like, Aaron, don't go there. Okay. So forgive me. You know, what is that process like? So she feels. She's like, "Hey, honey, something's
You go,
not right."
yep.
You go to the doctor. They're like, "No, something is not right."
Right.
How far? How much time until you're like in the ER fixing the problem?
They airlifted him from St. Charles to Ladue
And
to the
immediately,
Children's, and he had changed so much from the time I saw him pop out, and they're all freaking out, you know. And then by the time I saw him there, you know, and at that time, I can't think of the names, especially this time in the interview. But there's a hospital there at Ladue in 270.
no one's gonna hold it against you.
Anyway, they were one of the first at the time. He was one of the like first. They had this thing called a cooling blanket, and to stop the swelling in his head, they put him, this hour-old baby, on this cooling blanket that dropped his body temperature to like 92 or something like that, just to try to keep the swelling, because he has hydrocephalus along with, which is like liquid on the brain. He has a shunt. It's like a little pump that runs through here that he just continually pisses out, you know.
Jesus. What is going through your head at this time?
Man, you know, it was 15 years ago, right? So it was a while ago. But
Like helplessness.
yeah, man, just
anger.
everything. Yeah, all the above. Oh, hope he lives. First is just living, and then
God
okay,
bless.
what kind of son am I going to have? You know, that's always a question. We didn't know for the longest time. You know, how's he going to develop? How's he going to progress?
Meaning, like, this is all happening when he's a kid, so you're like,
Well, it's all happening when he's a month old.
Is this going to be like something that
It's like,
affects forever? Is he going to be able to bounce
is he ever going to be able to speak? Is he ever going to be able to walk? Is he ever going to be able to?
Yeah, if there is life
we knew
damage,
at the time this shit is hitting the. I mean, we're in the fucking.
A delivery room or
what's the intensive care or whatever for fucking weeks, you know what I mean, or whatever, you know.
Jesus.
I mean, we didn't hold him for weeks, you know. I mean, we knew shit was, you know.
Slim. What was your wife?
Man, we're just doing
because like it's hard on you.
It's hard on all of it, you know. Yeah, I mean, but then you know he turns out to what he is, and I don't know, you know, I don't want to get too far into that. But again, you know, he tells me he loves me every month. You know, we're on these message boards and stuff. So many kids I work with, so many nonverbal kids who've never told their mom and dad, you know. I mean, my son chatters his ass off. You know, he talks too much, you know. Now, is he going to score the touchdown on homecoming night? You know, pump the ball in the air and that kind of, you know, I came to grips with that a long time ago, you know.
Is that something you wanted for him just because that was something that
I'm just using that for example. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like as a dad, you think, okay, my son, is he going to blah, this or that, or, you know, be the academic or the...
Forgive me, let me change the question. I guess, so I have a daughter, right?
Right.
And in a lot of ways, because she's a girl and I'm a guy, I know that the way she will navigate the world will be kind of fundamentally different from me, right?
Yeah.
So... in a lot of ways, I want her to experience like the ups that I've had, but I don't know how I'll get her to that because I'm not a woman, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like I did certain sports that she'll probably never gravitate towards. Now, this is a very mild example of you. So I guess what I'm trying to say is like when you say like he'll never experience a touchdown, it's like a lot of people will never experience that touchdown.
Oh, yeah. And I was just kind of using that as an example. You know what I mean? Just kind of using an example. It's like you kind of realize... as you know,
certain limitations.
Yeah. You know what I mean? And so, and then there are things that he exceeded, you know what I mean? So, well, I'm just saying being verbal. Well, I'm just saying being verbal. Like I said, there's so many
the expectations
kids
would be.
or whatever. Yeah. Again, you just didn't know. I mean, he's 2 months old, 3 months old, having these crazy surgeries done. Yet, like 2 months old, putting the fucking shunt in his by his brain.
What is a shunt? Forgive me.
Again, it's just think of it as a pump, just getting
that pumps the fluid out.
Extra liquid, and just.
And this is liquid because of the
hydrocephalus. Again, I don't know. Google what hydrocephalus, how it happens, and all that. But it's fluid on the brain.
Mr. Producer, do you mind Googling hydrocephalus? Thank you.
But again, it's just fluid on the brain. Because
I actually don't know.
It's fluid on the brain. How it happens? Again, usually through trauma, something like that, trauma birth, or that. So,
was there? I know that your experience with your own son, coupled with the timing and like your timing.
Yep.
When they asked you to do something like this, was it an immediate yes? Where were you at in terms of like this is now a career shift?
It was kind of immediate yes. I mean, I come from a family of educators, and my natural kind of contrarian self made me steer away from it. So it just kind of seemed. And also, too, just like I said, after dealing with like so many therapies and things I've done with my son along the way, it's just like, dude, I'm ready. I mean, you know,
I've been bred.
I know what to do. I know what to do. You know, if this kid wants to sit here and not talk for 30 minutes,
I have the patience.
I'll sit here. No, we won't say a word for 30 minutes. You know,
there's something to be said.
Whereas I noticed some other like teachers and stuff, he'd be all. Use your words. Tell us what you need. You know, it's just like we're just gonna sit.
Excuse me, guys. Hydrocephalus is a chronic neurological condition, and it like pumps fluid to your brain, and it makes it just like unbalanced fluid in your brain.
Yep, it can cause like headaches and stuff.
Just any fluid? It's just fluid, liquid.
Yeah, that's what it says. Just
brain fluid, I guess, or.
Interesting.
Cranium fluid.
Forgive me. I guess there's something to be said because not to dive too in depth into the education system. By the way,
I like it. Let's do it.
Well, let me say one thing. There are 3 types of people I cannot get on this podcast.
Okay.
And I've tried.
Okay.
And you can attest to this. Like, I'm very open. I'm like, hey, this is what I want to talk about. Is there anything you want to talk about? I can't get a crypto bro
Okay.
because I don't believe in crypto and I think it's
Oh,
about
you should get Lance on here.
Lance Benoit. Yeah. He's like a crypto bro.
Oh.
Can he talk about
And
it?
the baddest motherfucker who's
I
ever
get
walked this
that,
state.
but-
Well, I'm just saying, it's a
I might-
twofold. You get 2 of things.
So here's the problem, right? Whenever I talk to them, I'm like, hey, I'm bringing you on to teach me about
Yeah,
crypto.
if he would come in, he
But I'm
would.
a finance major, and I think it's a bubble, and I think it's
yeah,
bullshit.
that maybe-
when I tell them
yeah,
that,
yeah,
'cause I don't want to bring anybody on
Right,
to
and be
dunk
like-
on them.
right.
Yeah. So I'm like, hey, you're coming into hostile territory. I haven't been able to get a crypto, bro. This is an open invitation. If you're a crypto guy and you're like Bitcoin to the moon, let's
Well, here's
talk.
the thing: you should make it a welcoming and be like, I'm not going to
But-
eviscerate you with my finance knowledge.
I guarantee you, I will eat them alive.
Yeah, I know you
I
can and
guarantee
will,
you.
but it takes what of the true the true samurai can just sit and let them tell their
You're
story.
a better man than I.
Let
Brother.
them
You
tell
have the
let them
patience.
tell their story.
Here's the problem. I have a character flaw,
just
and
gonna-
that's when I hear bullshit. I can't like, dude. Ask my wife, dude. We were at a Boeing dinner, and these Boeing people were talking, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like, you guys have lost $6 billion in $2 billion in 6 quarters. What the fuck is anybody at this dinner talking about?
right.
Everyone collectively shut your mouths. You're a failing company. So I am not the guy you invite
Right.
to a
Yeah.
dinner. Let me put it
All
this
right,
way.
you got
So, crypto
Crypto
bro,
guy.
I can't get anybody in primary education, public primary education,
Oh, really?
because I want to talk about, we are, like 36th in literacy. We're like this and that.
Yeah.
that. What is going on? This is a trajectory that is not healthy.
Well, maybe I can find you somebody.
If you
Yeah.
could, here's what I say to everybody. I am operating always in good faith, but
You're gonna get challenged.
You're gonna come into some hostile.
Yeah.
I will listen to you. I'll ask you questions. But if what you say is not like making sense, I will also come across and be like, "Hey, everything you just told me is bullshit."
But you know what? You should also realize this is not my field of specialty. I've not.
Yes.
I've not spent 10 years. Let me. How long have you been in finance? At least 10 years, right? I mean, you're not that old, but
no, you're right.
right, 10 years.
Yeah, about
Okay.
10 years.
Okay. So it's not your, so to maybe have someone come in from education who has 10, 15 years to kind of like show you, well, yeah, you may think that.
No. I'll tell you what the
Okay.
difference is. Forgive me. No. So first of all, you're absolutely right. When it comes to the crypto thing, I do come from a sense of not superiority, but I'm not ignorant to this field. But when it comes to education, you want to know what
There you
the
go.
number one reason they don't is? Fear of retaliation.
Yeah, well,
So when I tell the teachers, I'm like, hey, I want you to come on. I know this is kind of a
it's a
controversial.
tough spot for them.
Exactly. So, I've had
Because if
teachers.
the board member,
I've had teachers that
board
are
member,
retired.
administrator
Exactly, dude. It
comes
drives
in,
me fucking
well,
crazy.
because you're at the mercy.
That's some Big Brother type shit. You don't feel like you can talk openly? I have jobs. I have employers.
Maybe I
speak freely.
can. I mean, I've been pretty careful, I think, so far today. But again, I'm like way, low on the.
We also didn't dig deep.
And what else? And again, I'm from this state of mind. I've been doing this 3 years. I don't know. I'm fucking white belt, bro.
Yeah,
I'm
fair.
learning. I don't know. Talk to somebody who's got 10, 15. Talk to someone who's got the 10, 15 years in it,
So
and
that's the
he can
thing.
tell you maybe the struggles of a board that changes every 2 years, and and how much stuff they have to, and mandates that come from the state, mandate training, mandated this, I don't know, but I think it's from what I've gathered from my little short time, and I'm a what they call a para-educator. I'm not a full teacher. I have a bachelor's degree, but I don't have a bachelor's in education or any of that kind of stuff. I'm there to help the students and the teacher.
Yeah.
Okay. And the reason I picked that, dude, I've seen all the bullshit in the meetings and fucking, that the teachers have to keep up with and this and that. I mean,
When you say the meetings.
well,
and
just
bullshit,
meetings and they're just,
You mean like what? Like personal
and
personal
I don't want to get
development?
into, there's that, and then
Okay.
there's this kind, and there's IEP meetings where we got to meet with the parent, and then we got this, and we got that, and this. You know what I mean? There's
Meaning
just
there's a lot on the teacher's plate separate
that's
from
other
what
than
we're
just sitting
seeing.
with me,
Yeah.
and which is what I like. Is just fuck. give me the fucking kid.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't all the paperwork and ugh, you know
The
what I mean?
bureaucracy of education.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because everything wants to be formed and documented and fucking so and so tore down the thing off the wall.
But let me say this
and we
though,
need
right?
To, you know,
is there not something wrong with that? So like the crypto bro, you're completely right. I'm coming at it from a perspective of this is my field of expertise. Be prepared for an intellectual discussion.
Right.
The educator one is I've told them like this is what I see from the outside perspective. I'm wanting someone. I was trying to ask people that were like in education for like 10, 15, 20 years.
That's what you need.
Because they're not there for like 2 years, right?
Right.
But those are the ones that are the most adverse to I don't want to say honest conversation, but a in-depth conversation.
You need to find someone who was in the field and they got out.
Yeah. No, I'll tell you why not. Because they're no longer in it.
It's going to be hard. It's going to be hard.
I'm 2 years out of MMA and I'm already starting to feel like, oh
You're
man,
talking about,
the game has changed,
yeah,
right?
Right?
So like if I ask an educator who's retired, by the way, I have had educators that are retired, but I feel like this world collectively post-COVID has changed so much in 4 years. So like if you were a teacher who graduated in 2020, I can tell you from the teachers that I've had conversation with in confidence, it is a completely different fucking world. And I actually agree with you that like, it's not that I'm coming at it combatively, but the nature of my questions on education would result in answers that would result in repercussions for that person, and that is why I can't get someone. It's not that there's like teachers that can't like educate me. They can and they want to.
Yeah.
But when they tell me, I've had one teacher, I will never say her name. She told me, I want to have this conversation so bad, but I'm about to get a promotion.
Yeah.
And if I do this conversation with you, I'm worried about that promotion. And who am I? I'm not paying anybody to be on the podcast. Right. So I'm like, hey, you know what?
Well, you could bring in a slick administrator, and he would.
Here's the third person I can't get. Here's the third person I can't get.
Dance
I can't get
you.
a politician or anybody in any sort of like administrative office.
Yeah.
I can't get anybody.
Yeah.
No one. And I've sent emails.
And that's like, fair. That's fair. They've got nothing to gain from that though. You know what I'm saying?
I've tried everything but lying.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
right.
I will never lie to someone in order to get a podcast interview, but I've tried to reach out to politicians, both liberal and conservative. I've tried to reach out to like school board members. I've tried to reach out to nobody.
Because there's nothing to gain from it. There's nothing to gain from it.
I disagree.
Well, sure.
If you're
I mean, for them,
it's
like it's going to be.
If you're in this for the right reason, if you're in this and actually doing what, like, if you're a school board member and you really believe the steps you're taking, you would sit here. You would validate and you would defend. You know what I mean? Even if I had questions, you would have the basis of like your morality to be like, Ariane, I hear what you're saying. I get your counter, but here's why you're wrong. And here's the thing. I would never have somebody on the podcast and be like, no, go fuck yourself.
Right.
Never going to happen.
Right.
But I will ask the questions because I'm genuinely curious. Here's the truth of the matter. Cryptocurrency, by definition, is a bubble because it is a speculative asset. Explain to me why I am wrong and let me eat you alive live, right?
Right.
Education. By every metric, the next generation is dumber than the previous. Why? And you could, and that's the thing, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So I'm asking you, how many right answers are there? How many right answers are there in terms of administration?
Another pie chart answer.
Another pie chart. And here's the thing. I'm willing to have the conversation. I'm not trying to get too confrontational. Education's dear to me because I was a public school kid.
Yeah.
Dude, I was broke. My family couldn't rub 2 pennies together. And then me and my brother achieved the American dream. And I think to myself, I have a daughter now. And can I tell you something? We're shopping for a forever home. And my wife is like, well, what school district where are we going to live? I go, baby, what do you care? We're going to take them to private school anyway. Isn't that a shame?
Not really. I mean, for people your stature and all that,
no,
they can.
But I think that's a shame.
Yeah.
Because, but from my stature, but I came from public school.
Right.
So like the argument should be, baby, by the way, my wife is an engineer. We came from public school.
Right.
We should have this sense of like, we could take our
why don't you then?
Because I
fundamentally
think it's better. No, here's the problem.
I mean, hell, I got a boy in public and a girl that's finishing up private.
And going to university. Congratulations,
Yeah,
by the
yeah.
way. I'm going to say something, and I'm curious to see if you agree or disagree, and then by all means explain why you do either way. In our effort to become an inclusive society to all, spectrums of individuals, we have forgotten that we compete on a global scale. And in this inclusion of all, we have excluded the truly exceptional, because we have lowered that totem pole so much, that basis for like, this person is special, let's elevate them. And if you look at human history, and this is the sad reality, the vast minority have had such a big input into humanity that it has lifted us all. Do you know anything about how our cell phones work? Or
No.
Neither do I.
Right.
I'm not in that top echelon.
Yeah.
I'm a caveman just like you, brother. So when I see someone who's truly exceptional, we should do the due diligence of elevating them, because they, in their lifetime, will provide much more prosperity to humanity than either you or I. In our effort to include everyone, we've excluded the truly exceptional, and we forget that China, Russia, India, even now Mexico, we operate in a global environment for what? Human capital, labor, intelligence. Make America where everyone wants to come, who wants to be prosperous and the truly intelligent. That's how you get an Elon Musk.
Right.
That's how you get a Jeffrey Bezos. You might hate the billionaires, and that's a separate conversation for after they've acquired their wealth. I'm willing to have that one, because I'm actually I'm very in the middle, to be honest with you. But on this one, this is black and white, cut and dry. Like, what the fuck are we doing?
Right.
Do you forget that China wants to supersede us? Do you forget that Russia doesn't like us? Like, what are we doing, guys? So
I think that's so far.
education is where it
That's so
starts.
far out of their control.
I disagree. I think it's stage one. So like when you discuss a problem or something, like cancer, you have cancer. Well, how did that happen? It could be genetic, it could be diet, it could be lifestyle, it could be a plethora of variables. But you're focused on cancer. So what I'm saying is we have to compete on the global scale. What could that be? It could be education, it could be upbringing, it could be family values, it could be all these things. These are all variables, but nothing is more potent than education. I am a product of public education, and my prosperity that I'm afforded, God bless, is because of America and the public education system.
Right.
Why do I, as an individual who grew up in the public education system, feel like I need to go to a private? I think that is a failure. I should feel, if you told me, this certain public school system is better than this one, that's always existed.
Right.
I think, in my due diligence, it doesn't matter. Public school in the St. Louis metropolitan area fucking sucks. Fucking sucks.
Yeah.
And that's sad, because I know a lot of public school teachers that do great work.
Right. And
Great
dedicated,
work.
yep.
But they are like a piece in the puzzle that is this structure. And that's why I want to have someone to come on and be like, what the
How does the
fuck
structure
are you
work?
guys doing? You're breaking it. You're breaking it. By the way, not by my metrics, by measurable metrics. This isn't anecdotal. So like, to bring it back, because you are now in the education field, and I believe that you're in a very niche yet very important role. You are a piece in the puzzle of the structure.
Absolutely.
And there might be things that happen that like, hey Brett, you got to do this training. Hey Brett, there's this meeting that you got.
Absolutely mandatory stuff. Yep.
And you might think to yourself like, whatever I have to do to help these kids.
Yep.
But at what point does the bureaucracy of education now hinder you from doing a better job, thus resulting in a poorer performance for these kids, thus resulting in a lesser outcomes for whatever it is that they do in their life?
That'd be a great question for
you're an individual.
For a teacher.
Take you, extrapolate it to the macro, now you have the nation.
Yeah.
This is not sustainable.
Yeah, that'd be a great question.
So, and by the way, I don't know dick about education. I am willing to have anybody on this seat and talk to me about it. I can't get one. I cannot get a single person who actively works in education to sit down with me. And that's also an open
Because it's touchy because you're dealing with taxpayers' money. And so
fuck the taxpayer money.
That's easy for you, though.
No.
I'm saying, but for you to come up and to expose your livelihood.
This is one thing that I would pay for Fuck the taxpayer money. It's the kids. It's the next generation. Brett, you and I will die. Who do we leave the
I'm
word?
saying you're trying to get somebody to come in here and to talk real. And they're going to sacrifice their livelihood.
Duly noted. You know what?
They're going to sacrifice their livelihood, and
if they get fired, I'll hire them.
Exactly. So
I'm serious.
Yeah.
If you sit down with me and you get fired because of what you say to me, I'll find a job for you. We went down a bit of a rabbit hole with education simply because we were talking about like what I can't get on the podcast. Let me also add this. I don't blame anyone for not wanting to or wanting to talk to me.
right.
I just hope that everyone knows that I'm coming at it from a perspective of honesty, open dialogue, and good faith.
Right.
I'm not trying to dunk on anyone or any of these things, right?
And at the same time, as someone who's interviewed thousands of people, you got to keep in mind too. It's like, well, what do they have to gain
Fair.
from this?
Fair. Or
What do I have to
What do
gain?
they have to lose?
Well, exactly.
Negative
from driving all the way or whatever, blah blah blah, and sitting here and exposing myself, and it gets viewed by maybe my coworkers and bosses and
That's fair.
all that. So you know what I mean. So we're talking about MMA, man. You've been around this, scene, the recent scene, I should say, a little bit more than I have.
I would actually say that you know what you and I have in common? So because I've been out of the fight game for 2 years, and I don't know if this is because I'm out of the fight game per se, but like there's the next generation of kids coming up that I just genuinely don't know.
Right.
Mind you, that could be I don't know them because I'm not training. I don't know them because no one knows them. They're 0-0, 1-0, what have you. But I see the next generation of kids coming up, and I'll tell you this right now. Martial arts has never been at a higher level than it is today. These amateurs today, 18, 19, 20 years old,
Right.
have been training since they were 10 because they've had the UFC. They've had the WEC before that, Strikeforce, and then Bellator, what have you. We've never had better unarmed combat in the entirety of humanity than today.
Am I wrong, or maybe some of the things I've seen recently, has wrestling kind of gone the way?
Gone the way, extrapolate that thoughts. Forgive me.
Meaning, like, if I was a fucking badass and, Andrew Sanchez, Josh Sampo kind of badass, and just come in and just, like, fucking take you down. I just don't see that as much. Again, I'm not out as much anymore, but I just don't see the...
Yes and no. Yes, in the sense that it used to be, when I was coming up specifically, wrestling was enough to get me into the game. Because
Sure.
wrestling was like my background.
Sure.
Now, granted, I adopted many facets of the game, but like if you were a Division I wrestler, like a Division I All-American
Right.
wrestler in 2015, you were probably going to be in the UFC, right?
Right.
Now,
Not a given, huh?
well, here's the problem. Here's the other thing I'll say. And this might resonate more with martial artists. There's wrestling, folk style wrestling, Greco-Roman wrestling, freestyle wrestling. Then there's MMA wrestling.
Right.
There's a lot of things in wrestling that you can't do in MMA because you're going to get choked.
Right.
You're going to get knocked
Sure.
out.
Yeah,
you're going
yeah.
to eat a knee. You're going to eat a guillotine. You're going to eat whatever. I think what's happened is the previous generation before me, I think there's 3 generations. So Gen 1, it was isolated. You were either boxing, either jiu-jitsu, either wrestling. And then maybe you had like a sprinkle of other martial arts, but you had your niche. And then we all collectively resonated with the fact that jiu-jitsu was the strongest.
Right.
It was the most definitive martial arts because the proof was in the pudding. Generation 2 is actually where I would put myself, where you have guys which saw Generation 1 and adapted, realized, hey, my martial art is not enough because I was a wrestler. I need to adapt other martial arts. So when I started MMA, it was at 19, and I had already had 4.5 years of folk style wrestling. I adopted boxing, jiu-jitsu, kickboxing, Muay Thai.
Right.
I started putting that into my game. But my base was wrestling. I was a wrestler who
Right.
did mixed martial arts.
Yeah.
Generation 3 is what you're seeing coming
Yeah.
up now. These kids don't wrestle. These kids don't do
Yeah.
jiu-jitsu. They do mixed martial arts.
Yeah.
They're like a
Maybe
purple
that's
belt
it.
in
Yeah,
jiu-jitsu, They're a Muay Thai specialist. They're a boxing specialist. These kids are killers. Mixed martial arts, in my opinion, in the next generation will become the only martial art. In the sense of, if you can only grapple, you're lacking.
Yeah.
If you can only strike, you're lacking. And if you can do all of it, that is now the barrier to entry.
Yeah.
It'll go away from this like, oh, you're a Division I at Penn State or whatever. You know what I mean? You won't be good enough.
You don't think those will be like some outliers who will...
No, because the money is in the trajectory to do that. Sean Strickland, of all people, actually had the best quote on this. He said, if you started paying in the UFC what you pay in the NFL, the NHL, the MLB,
yeah, exactly.
Every champion is US.
Yeah.
Because now the money dictates
100%.
it. So, like, let's say you're like an NFL linebacker. When you could start making the money in MMA that you could in NFL
At
and have a
23 years
longer
old, at 23
career,
years old.
you're going to start choosing other facets. And now imagine if you have a super athlete at the highest level of the game in mixed martial arts, you're going to run through people, right? So MMA is such a nascent child of a sport. And we've seen it from your time before my time.
Yep.
Right? You saw Sampo, Rice House, Lance, Lawrence, Chris Heatherly. That was the first generation. In my opinion, was the second generation. The Newmans, the Fierce Taylors,
Jake Roberts.
A plethora of guys.
Right.
I'm forgive me if I'm not naming everybody, but you know who you are based on age. Now we are getting to be the older ones.
But are these new guys as good as you?
Better.
You think?
Better. I know because I ran up against one. I lost to Austin Bashi, who's now 14-0.
Sure. I'm just saying, like, generationally. Is it?
Okay, so I will say this. I ran up against like the Enigma.
The older generation kids just seem, and even the ones before you, it was just like, it was kind of part of the draw. Was like these were like tough kids, man. These weren't your fucking quarterbacks. These were your fucking
Can I say
outlier kids, man. You know what I mean? And that was kind of part of the.
But being tough.
Again, it goes back to the red light district of the sports world.
Do you think tough is an accolade? Do you think it's like something that separates them? Because I'd make the argument.
Yeah, I think some kids are just tough, and some guys just fucking quit in there.
Brett,
and some
next generation that's coming up right now, being tough is the barrier to entry. You don't think Austin Bashi's tough? I hit him with some shots and he ate them.
You're talking about one kid who's 15-0. I'm just talking about
noted.
generational fighting.
Are you talking about the expanse of like the population?
It just is this younger generation as tough as you, or are you just like how the older guys look back on your generation,
you're
what your guys are tough, and meaning tough is like just hard ass gritty kids. You know what I mean?
I think if you want to take a look at the direction of times, it'll make for a softer, more docile,
more
people.
Sport. It's a sport,
But take from the macro to the micro. So from America or the world to mixed martial arts. So you're right. The pool of people that are adequate for this role or this job or this path will dwindle. But the ones that make it through, they're fucking killers.
Yeah.
You're seeing younger and younger and younger guys come in there and mop the floor.
They're so polished too. I mean, like I said, I don't watch it like I used to, but it's just
because they're not starting with wrestling or boxing.
Yeah, they're just clean.
They're doing with everything.
Yeah.
MMA is now the martial art. Mixed martial arts is now the base. Everyone has wrestling. Everyone has jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Everyone has boxing and kickboxing. It used to be that like, I don't know when I was coming up, I used to think that I could beat certain people because of the styles. I was like, oh, I could just take them down. I don't care about the striking. Now it's like...
Take him down, beat him up.
Yeah, now it's like, well, okay, I take him down, but they might sub me.
You're right.
I have to take them down. They can get up. They have enough wrestling. Can I take them down?
Right, exactly.
You know what I mean?
And it's the second round, late in the second round.
That's, Brett, that's why I quit. I didn't quit because I lost. I quit because I was like, my goal was to be the best in the world. I'm never going to beat Austin Bashi. That's not going to happen. Father Time's against me.
Yep.
This kid's younger, faster, stronger, what have you. So I was like, well, what am I going to do? Settle for like number 10? No. Okay, I'm done.
Yeah.
That was me personally. Everyone goes through their own path. But what I will say is my isolated anecdotal evidence will become the norm. That's just the first. Who knows who's behind him?
Speaking
Raul
of
Rosas Jr., the bantamweight already in the UFC. Similar style. This next generation of kids, because we were talking about like wrestlers or whatever. Right now you have, some champions that are heavy wrestlers, some champions that are heavy strikers, like an Alex Pereira. Or you have the bantamweight champion, can't think of his name off the top of my head. Just beat Sugar Sean.
Right.
Different styles. Grappling heavy, striking heavy. What I'm saying is, this next generation, Generation 3 of fighters, there will be no holes. They will be complete because they trained in mixed martial arts from the get-go. Monday was jiu-jitsu. Tuesday was boxing. Wednesday was wrestling.
Right.
Thursday was
Well,
sparring.
they've been doing this since they were 12.
Yes. And
now
they knew that they were going to be
And now they're
MMA fighters.
24.
When your daughter was doing soccer, when did she start?
4.
4. I'm telling you, there's some like yellow black belt at age 12 that's been doing jiu-jitsu since they were 4.
We were talking about Father Time, right?
Yeah.
Poor Mike Tyson.
Oh my God.
We're getting there close. Not that
They're
I want.
fighting tonight.
Not that I
They're
want to
fighting
watch.
tonight.
Not that I want to watch.
I'm
but-
gonna watch. Are you not gonna watch?
No, I don't want to watch. Dude, I
It's a
had that. I
circus.
had that man's photo in my locker in high school.
Do you think he's gonna lose?
1987. You know?
Do you think he's gonna lose? Is that what you're?
I think he's going to lose. Yeah, I think he's going to lose. I just don't want it to be embarrassing.
Well, here's the other thing.
I want him to make money, whatever. I guess you still need money, Mike. Okay. I just don't want you to be embarrassed.
I'll tell
That's
you
just
why
what I
I
want.
don't think it will be. Have you seen the rule set? It's like 14-ounce
Yeah,
gloves. Mike won't get paid. It's banned to bet in 7 of our states. It's like it's not a real boxing match. You know what I mean?
I know. But people talk about it, like. And again, if he gets flatlined,
Jake he's a genius of marketing.
Mm-hmm.
He's a genius of what he's doing. He's bringing life back into boxing, but the way I would describe it is like special boxing, like separate from real boxing.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
100%.
Like, this is a show.
Yeah.
The WWE of boxing.
Yeah,
if that makes
something
sense.
like that, yeah.
He's
Along
calling out
that
Canelo,
line.
who's 60 pounds lighter than
Whatever,
him.
he
He's
doesn't-
calling out all these other guys who have everything to lose, nothing to gain.
Like call outs matter. Like we all know. Like call outs even matter.
Well, here's the
it's
crazy
just to
thing.
get people
The
clicking.
first legitimate fight he had against Tommy Fury, who by the way is also like
Right.
I know he's undefeated, but if you were to like look at the acumen of his build, is like Tommy's a 500 boxer if he's lucky. He's not Tyson Fury, and Tommy was able to beat him by split decision with judges that Jake Paul picked. By the way, same judges that he's going to have tonight. when he
Yeah.
fights
Yeah,
Tyson,
yeah.
Mike Tyson. Here's what I think about fighting in general. The only truest form of fighting is the highest level.
Right.
When you're the UFC champion,
Yep.
you're fighting number 2. You're number 1, they're number 2.
Or whatever, top 5. That's just
Or
that's
top
just
5.
yeah, right. I'm saying. I mean, let's give these guys
But
or
the adequate
shit.
competition level, you're
top
correct.
10 or what.
You're
I mean, I'm
correct.
saying. Let's talk about
This person belongs.
the tip of the spear. Of,
They should be there.
right.
And same thing in boxing. Like when Canelo bumps up a weight class and he fights,
When boxing's great, boxing's so great.
boxing's never been better in
You know
my
what I mean?
lifetime than today. I know that I'm a 92 baby, so like I kind of was young when like Tyson, Holyfield, and all
Sure,
these guys
sure.
were coming up. In my lifetime, I've never been more in tune with boxing.
From what I understand, yeah,
Simultaneously,
I've heard from people's opinions who I respect. I don't know boxing,
Yeah.
but they say similar things.
Let me ask you a question, if you don't mind.
Let it rip.
Is an Ngannou versus Anthony Joshua boxing match different from a Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson boxing match?
Oh yeah,
And why?
age.
Because Tyson's out of his prime. Jake's a young man.
Mike
Ngannou
Tyson's
and-
58 year. What did Sean Strickland post? You mentioned him earlier.
No.
He's a 58-year-old man who a month ago had like a.
By the way, they're not drug testing for this fight because Mike Tyson's going to need some sort of advantage. And if you don't think Jake Paul's taking advantage of that, you're an idiot.
I'm not even talking about that shit. He's fighting a. So you understand why I think's the better, Anthony Joshua with Nagano, which is again, it's not a.
But it's like an MMA
It's
guy
not
versus a
something that
boxer guy.
intrigues me, but compared to what's going on tonight,
I'm going to watch
you
it.
know.
I love combat sports.
Yeah.
Dude, I would watch two homeless guys fight if they offered tickets. I love fighting. So
Yeah,
I'm
I mean,
also at the bottom of the barrel, duly noted.
Right. I mean, I don't think. I mean, if I get home in time and things happen, I don't know. But
What are you doing after this?
What did I tell you before I got here? My night is yours.
Let's watch the fights after this.
Good times. Good times.
Brett,
Conversation complete.
Yeah. The podcast is pretty much done, but I do want to end on this note.
Okay. Hope I didn't bump it and send the red lights off into.
When I started this podcast, I had a thought of what it would be like.
Can I say one thing before you start?
Go ahead.
Because you asked me to come on a long time ago.
Yes.
And I was like, man, I don't have the right suit. Everybody on here's got a fucking suit. They're all talking about portfolios and money.
Jesus Christ.
I'm like, you want to talk about two things I don't give a fuck about?
Suits and money?
Suits and money.
You're
And I like
bringing them
style.
out.
I like style. But
No.
anywho, go back to where you were. No.
Duly noted, brother.
No,
Maybe-
but
maybe I
yeah,
need to
you
work
asked
on
me
that.
early on, and I was just kind of
wore a
like,
gi one
I was
time.
kind of like, that was awesome. That was awesome.
When I started this podcast, I didn't know what form it would take. I just knew that I wanted to talk to people. The same conversations that I had behind closed doors, I thought were immensely valuable because I benefited from them in my life. Like talking to older people than myself
Yeah.
that had more knowledge on a topic than I did myself. I was able to kind of like accumulate this over the course of time and use this. It's like, an intelligent man learns from their mistakes. A wise man learns from others. It's kind of like that. And one of the people that I like when I started this podcast, I was like, there's like a list of guys that I want to talk to. Mike Rogers, Steve Berger. By the way, Jim Jenkins is one of them.
Nice.
And so is actually I'm not gonna say their name right now because I'm still working on that one. But there's one more person from like the OG days that will kind of like surprise everybody. But dude, I got Tim Lukanoff who never does.
Right.
interviews,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
bear with me. I'm
That was
working on
great.
it.
That was great.
You were one of them because
Oh, sweet.
and I'll tell you this
Great
story,
crowd.
and this is what we're gonna end with. I was 22 years old. I had just beaten Court Wall at Shady Jack's Arena, or the biker bar show. I was a 5-0 amateur.
Outdoor.
No outdoor venue. No one really knew about me, and I didn't even
Feet
know.
melting on the fucking.
Yeah, I didn't even know about my place in MMA. And after I beat Court, you guys did a article on me where I was sitting there with my hands raised as like the thumbnail. I was at a party that time afterwards because I was still in college, so I was out with friends.
Right.
I'll never forget. I'm 32 years old now. That happened when I was 21. I'll never forget how everyone, when I show them, I go, yo, I had this news outlet do a story on me. Everyone clicked on that and started reading it. And I'll never forget how that made me feel. It made me feel like what I'm doing is noticed. What I'm doing is acknowledged.
It goes back to what I said, man. We were the fucking sound. You know what I mean? If a tree falls in the wood, does it, or where that old adage is, if a tree falls in the wood, does it make a sound? We were the fucking sound. You know what I mean? It's like it verified what happened on that day at this show.
It. You didn't verify it. You amplified it.
Yeah.
So thank you. And by the way, when I say thank you, I know for a fact from Luis Pena to myself.
Oh, there's a name I've not heard of in a while.
There's many guys that I've either heard rumblings from or I've talked to that when I bring up the name Knuckle Junkies, they have reverence for. So Brett, I have one thing to say, and that's thank you.
Oh, you're welcome, man.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure. We had a blast. Good show?